And there. Okay, so we now have the recording set up, and we're going to wait here for Jim's daughter to come.
Yeah, she'll be here in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Louis, what time were you there? You're later than most, right?
Yeah, I was there just before we turned the camp over to MacV. So I went to Tuitar. It's probably late 68 or early 69, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And Frank, you there are early. I don't know if we're going to have Bill Florence showing up. He when I sent him the email, I immediately got an order for the Green Beret magazines from him. So he obviously was interested in what's going on, but I don't know whether he's going to join us here.
Yeah, Captain Florence was the CO when I got there. And when he rotated back, Charlie Ruggles took over.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ruggles was there till the revolt. And then we went back to B-23. But I didn't know Florence that well. He was only there for a couple of weeks when I got there. And then he rotated out, he rotated back. But that was in what, 65?
64 would be the revolt.
I think the revolt was 60. Well, the second revolt is what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that was in 65.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that had two of them. Buon Brieng broke up the first revolt when they come back in. That camp didn't fall. And the time they come back in, they picked on us first to make sure we would get it. And nobody followed them. But no, I wasn't up there on that one. Now, when that revolt happened, Jan Giesenthaler and I had gone on an operation. And I thought we had blood poisoning in my right leg up there, and it wound up being a blood clot. And they medevaced me back to the hospital. And the day after I got to the hospital, when Fulro, Major E. Gunai, I believe is what his name was, had the camp. It was on a Monday morning. They went to put the flag up. As they put the flag up, instead of the VC flag, it was the Montagnard flag went up on the flagpole, and they lost control of it. They disarmed them. They didn't do any harm to anybody. He told them they could keep the weapons, but they couldn't carry them. After I got out of the hospital and went back to B-23 then, and they were trying to figure out how they were going to get them out of there. It turned into a Chinese fire drill, from gassing the camp to bombing around the camp to doing everything else. And finally, Fulro just left out. They left 200 people in the camp. And we had the B team from, that I believe was a Delta project, come back in. They disarmed those 200 and deactivated, and then brought everybody back in and scattered us again.
There you go.
There I am.
Hi, guys.
That's my daughter, Ray.
Have fun.
Now, Jim, you and Ray were there at the same time, basically, right?
Yeah, we were.
I was there from August of 65 August 66 till March of 67.
We left at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I left at about the same time.
So which one of you came in first?
Me. I was there in June 66.
Yeah, I was in Bamatuit, operations sergeant, from until I went to Tan Rai. I went to Tan Rai in August, but I was operations sergeant in Bamatuit from I think like February till March, or to August of 66, and then I went over to Tan Rai in 67.
All right, we don't have anybody here that covers that interim period from the time they closed down Buon Brieng, at the time they opened up Tan Rai. There was an intermediate camp at New Bauloch. And I don't have anybody that can speak on that here yet. Somebody shows up, we'll let them go. Go on that. But Ray, what did you get from people who were there already about how the camp got started in that location, and then what happened when you got there?
Well, I did a little research and talking with some of the people, and like you say, they came into Bauloch initially, and they came from Buon Brieng. Probably half the team came from half of their team at Buon Brieng came down to Bauloch. From Bauloch, they moved up to Tan Rai as we know it, and they started that camp. Now, they started on the other end of another camp, Brieng, and that was there when we got there. So that might have been started in probably 61 or 62. I'm not sure.
Okay, there's the new camp.
There's the new camp, and then the old camp is on the left. And that old camp was there, but the village chief and his sub chiefs were all living there. And it was more of a village than it was a camp. But if you looked around, you could recognize the old that's six-sided there, it looks like. I don't know how, but we put up a five-sided camp up on top of the hill there and the runway, and cleared off the top of the hill. Now the hill was had two bulldozers, and the hill was pretty well cleared off, and we used all that wood to build the camp. And like I say, it cost me $4,000 to build the camp. That's because I had to go down and get some of the local goods, and but I used all the government barbed wire. I used all the government tin. They brought in scads of tin. I used it in the construction of the camp, but just between the two, there's a village, and that's where we housed all the family of the CIDG. So now we're talking 1964 when they got up there and started it. I got there in June of 66, and a lot of the outlay and the basics were up. So in June of 66, we started building squad level defensive areas. We put all the food gas and diesel fuel out in the barrels all around the camp, all that standard defensive mechanism. And we were pretty well protected. We were up on a hill there. And then Jim Neighbors here came in August of 66, and he kept building the camp. But more importantly, what Jim brought was a little bit of maturity and intelligence to what might otherwise be a crazy mob. We were running all around doing what we could.
Not bad.
we would go out as far as we could, and then we'd get our ass kicked, and we'd come back and things like that. And we had Eugene Tafoya. You can read some books about him. And we also had the guy that replaced Jim when he left. We didn't know it at the time, but he came in on the same airplane. I guess it was CV2, one of those CV2s, I think it was called.
Caribou.
The Air
Caribou.
Caribou. Yeah, thank you. But the Air Force had already taken over by then. And by the way, when the Air Force came out and measured our runway, they said, no, it's not going to, it's only 700 feet. You got to make it 900 feet or something like that. So when we transferred to Caribou from the Army to the Air Force, that's the first thing they did. He came out and did an assessment of my runway. They said, no, we can't land the Caribou. I said, well, we've been landing that sucker for, I don't know how long. In fact, Jim, were you there when we landed a C-130 23, I think it was.
Yeah, you got a C-123 and got it stuck in the end of the runway.
It was during the monsoons. It got stuck and it had to stay there for a while. And we finally got the bulldozer and pulled it out. And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it was a mess. But Jim took care of that. He was the man.
What was the, there was a French tea plantation too. Was it down here someplace?
Yeah.
It was south of the camp, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
There you go. We'd go there every now and then. And there was a Frenchman married to a Montagnard, and he had some kids, and his kids were definitely in charge. You know, they were half white and half Montagnard, and they were well built, smart, and they were the leaders of that outfit. They were not pushed away like you would normally think. But yeah, he stayed there a while. We came in there one night. Jim wasn't with me, but I think Van Horn was with me or somebody. We came in there, and the French guy came over and said, "Hey, if you wanted to, you could stay in my villa here or whatever, you know." And I said, "No, thanks. I'll stay out with the troops." And we found out later, we found out somehow or another that the Viet Cong had stayed in that bed the night before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way he had to do it, that Frenchman. Anyhow, go ahead and ask questions, but Steve?
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit because Bill has joined us here, and Bill opened up. He was the first PCS commander at Buon Brieng.
Fantastic.
What I'll do here is stop this share and share screen.
Okay, ready? Am I supposed to speak?
Bill, yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I was the first PCS commander. Of course, the guy I relieved was very well known, and if I can only remember his name, Grace, talk about a mental blank. The guy who quelled the Montagnard Rebellion, and the TDY team from Okinawa.
Colonel Eberhahn or something.
No, you're talking about Gillespie, probably.
Yeah. And so it was his team that we relieved. We had a couple, 3 days overlap, and I remember one of the first things he mentioned was, oh, by the way, they're kind of fermenting and fomenting, and this might happen again. You would be well advised to establish rapport very quickly. So we did, and geez, I think a couple of the team guys were really into pop music at that time, and one had a guitar, and shit, they had a bop session out in the yard there 2 days later, and it was kind of a coincidence because there was a reporter had stopped in from Pleiku along with Colonel Hale, and he took pictures, and the guy introduced himself that he was from the Milwaukee Sentinel Milwaukee Journal, and I said, hell, I used to carry your paper when I lived near Milwaukee. So it turned out that he had a front page, well, I don't know if it was front page or not, but an aunt later sent me the clipping, and it was these two guys doing their music jig was the photo, and so that was kind of a coincidence. But anyway, I left the camp about June, and didn't know anything was going on until one day somebody came in and said Fulro had taken over, which was later in July, August timeframe, as I understand. So anyway, that's kind of the front end and the rear end of my tenure there at Buon Brieng.
Frank Treadwell's on here, and he joined you as a weapons man, I guess, just shortly before you went off.
Who was that?
Frank Treadwell.
Yeah. I thought
Frank?
that looked familiar. The name looked
How
familiar.
we? How you doing?
Good, good. Jeez. What the hell has happened? We all got older, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Not me.
There's a difference
Okay.
between 24 and 84.
Yeah, I 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Just a second, I got a phone answer.
Steve, when he said June, he means 1965.
I'm sorry.
No,
Uh,
he
I got into Boon Brieng on the 1st of April. And that's when I come in from 232. And then I was there until the revolt, which was I believe the revolt was in September, I believe, in August, latter part of August.
What year was that?
65.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Did you take over the B from Brooks, was it? I mean the B detachment, Steve?
no. I was there as a lieutenant.
Okay.
In '67 in Pleiku.
Okay.
That there was another Sherman up there who was a major or lieutenant colonel who took over the Mike Force, but that wasn't me.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of lost track of the B and C detachment commanders, of course. But that was, I have to say, that was one of the most hands-off little military tours I've ever had. I don't think we got instructions from higher headquarters from B or C detachments, but maybe 2 or 3 times. And usually those had to do with the VIP arriving. But
that was one of the unusual things about Vietnam, in that with all the experience we had, a lot of it was well directed toward the A teams. But the B team commanders that I've talked to and asked questions on were never given any particular instructions about what they're facing as a B team commander. I mean, questions of dealing with corruption at the A team level. Everybody had to face that problem by themselves for the first time. There was nothing there that says, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a shootout down at your A team, and you're going to have to go down there and straighten it out. But there's no B team commander who ever heard about that before he got there. He was the first one that ever happened to.
yeah, that sounds about right. It was kind of a detached life or command atmosphere, you might say. There was virtually no intrusion. We did a monthly opsum. Frank, you may remember
Mopsums, right?
The ops summary that Sergeant Four used to put together, and but otherwise that was the only interest sometimes from higher headquarters, it seemed, as to what we were doing or not doing.
I'd like to add on to that, Bill and Steve. When I came into country, like most of you probably, I went into Pleiku, the C team. So I observed Colonel Patch.
Yeah.
Now, he was a lieutenant colonel, a wonderful man, but he seemed to be the docent for the visitors. I mean, like John Wayne came in there before he made his movie, and Colonel Patch would take him out to all the A camps and show him what to do, show him how A camp ran, I guess. So that level had to do with the newspaper people, the reporters and such. So I go down, then Major Gillette, Ed Gillette, he and I went down to Bamituit, to the B team. He took over the B team. I was still a captain, lowly captain, and he waited so in the B team, he had a staff, and the staff was kind of busybodies. Half had already had an A team, and the other half did not. typically, Bill will attest to this. If you got 6 months at an A team, you're pretty damn lucky. That was the best job in the world, bar none. So at the B detachment, Major Gillette, later Colonel Gillette, Lieutenant Colonel Gillette, he would travel around to his 6A detachments, and then he would go where maybe where there was trouble, or he'd take a VIP, or I know he brought a VIP into our camp a couple times. So then at the A team, finally, I got the A team, the best job in the world.
I think he's okay with you, but I just want to.
Bill, you're right. We did not have to deal with the
He
uppers.
doesn't do anything stupid.
We could make our own plan. And when Jim got there, Jim Neighbors, we were on our own.
Okay. I think you're fine.
I was at,
See what he does. He's okay. Okay.
B team.
Yeah.
I don't know who's making that
he likes
motion,
you.
but I'm gonna
Okay.
cut my,
This is going to be going.
I just don't want to take any.
Okay.
I'm going to mute some people who are talking, and I hope you know how to unmute. Big Al, what's your last name? Al?
Big
I'll-
Al.
I'll figure
What's
that
up?
out. Okay, on the MOPSM, I have been collecting those. The group consolidated the MOPSMs for each of the subordinate detachments. They ended up with about a paragraph each month about the actions at the camp. The full MOPSMs were very tedious, very long, and it would be very difficult for me to deal with that volume. But the monthly MOPSMs I have from 1962 going on to 1970, and I'm missing about 12 of them in that whole period of time. I'm still looking for them. I think they're going to show up in Carlisle, but the people in Carlisle don't know how to find anything over there. Mike Urkel, I had to mute you there for a bit because you had some extra noise. So put your speaker back on if you want to talk in here. So as I said, I've got all those MOPSMs, and I'm slowly working on it as a side project. But anybody who would be interested in it, if they want to do some work, I'll give them some MOPSMs to type up, because I've got about half of them typed, and that's I'd like to get them all put together because they've got a lot of good history in there. Okay, Ray, we interrupted you a little bit when you were back there talking about the camp at your time frame.
All right, I'll carry on down the line, but I volunteered to help you with the OPSMs for Tan Rye. I know you and I went to the archives one time, and we pulled out a bunch of them there, but I can help you with that. So that small portion. I know Bob Cavedras, I think, was helping you, wasn't he?
He typed up 3 of them, and he did quite well. I hate to task him for doing more. I'd given 4 people 3 each, and he was the only one who produced anything. And that was very helpful, though.
Knowing Bob, he would help out more, but I would I'll take care of the Tan Rye part of it. You and I can work on that. But
Right.
going back to the time I went from the C team, Colonel Patch, down to the B team, Major Gillette at the time. He and I went into Bamituit same time, and he put me on Moxnick's jobs there for a while, CA PsyOps and Intel officer of the B team, until I could get an A team. I finally got an A team in June of '66. And like Bill Florence was saying there, I had all the freedom in the world. I mean, we were out there in the middle of nowhere. And then later I found out the reason, the overall strategy was you put an A team up there close to the border. And then the first time it gets hit, you bring in the big guns. I mean, that was Westmoreland's concept. And but I had the best job in the world, so I couldn't complain. And Tan Rye, at that time, the time I was there, was pretty mild. I kept a diary. You're not supposed to do that. Someplace around here, back on the wall there, you can see the old diary I kept. And then my students later on, I came in, I talked about Vietnam, they asked questions. And I said, if you guys will put it into the computer, I'll publish it. So I went ahead and published this thing here, Tan Rye, and it's on Amazon. I sent it out to the team that I had contact with, but most of them died away. Jim Neighbors and I are the only two left. Van Horn is still around from my team I'm talking about, and Bob Clark, and a couple of Vietnamese, Sam Lee and Lee, and then Sun Huang. And they were there at the time I was there. Actually, Sun Huang was the son of an LLDB commo guy. And he and his sister were little kids at the camp. And like I said, they loved the camp. And being kids, they ran around, and mostly the village, I guess, is where they ran around. They didn't run around into camp. I don't think so, but I had already left, and I don't know what was going on then. And I think Kuhn, Jim, you can further on here, but did Kuhn take your job? Was he the team sergeant of Tan Rye after you left?
Coombs, yeah. Temporarily, I think he took my job. I don't know who came in after him, but he was a weapons man, but he took the job as team sergeant after I left.
Yeah.
Isn't Templar still around?
Well, Roger Templar sends me a little funny thing every day or so, and I sent him the email. Of all people, I thought he would come in here. Yeah, he's over in Florida, I think, or someplace. Roger Templar.
Roger Templar, yeah.
And I guess he went on to OCS or something after that.
He did. I don't know. He went to OCS, but I lost track of him after that. I don't know what happened.
Strangely enough, I started receiving these little funny things all the time, you know, cartoons and jokes, and they're good. But they come from Roger. So I'm on his mailing list, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll have to get a hold of him and ask him why he didn't show up here. I thought he did. I sent him an email and invited him. He might pop in there later on. Who knows?
You started mentioning books on the website. There's a link for Ray Strahler's book Under Tan Rye, and there's also a link for Sam Lee and Lay's book there. Bill, I don't know if your mailman has come today yet, but your Green Beret magazines should be showing up any moment now.
Yeah, looking forward to that packet. Do all you guys know? Well, Frank might be the most concerned with regard to. There was an article in National Geographic. In January '65.
Right, that was the Montagnard Revolt.
Yeah,
issue.
that was the rebellion, and I didn't know about this until getting home. But there's great photos of the camp layout and everything in it. So if you ever have a chance to draw, I'll see if I can find that particular picture. But Gillespie is shown in that, and
Okay.
but there's a great shot of the camp itself. Does that
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this is better. Yeah.
You often find copies of that National Geographic in the libraries when they have little sales going on. At least my library did. So
I found it mostly in antique stores.
Bill, what's the date on that? That's National Geographic?
Yeah, it's a January 65. So it was in writing and being drafted as we arrived. Our team arrived. Frank, who did you replace? Were you heavy weapons?
I was light weapons. No, I didn't replace anybody. I come in. Ralph Beal was heavy weapons, I believe.
Yeah.
And no, it was the in-country rotation that caught me.
Yes.
They come back in when they got the last 16 A's in there, they started rotating everybody around. We wouldn't rotate out at the same time. And they brought me in from Anlock, and I went to Boone Brieng up there. I was up there about 3 days when you and Beal went out on that Hellebore operation. And we've never had one of those before. It's kind of interesting when they all sat down on the airstrip. And I think y'all were out there for about a week out there. And when you come back in.
Yeah.
Well, you guys did a great job in building that camp, because I mean, I was there a heck of a long time after you guys got there, and that was probably the neatest laid out camp that I've ever been in. I mean, you know, we had this big bunker right in the center, and my room was down there way toward the end, and that was a concrete blockhouse. I'll tell you, that was like underground, like crazy. And I remember there's a rumor saying that there's a python running around down there someplace. I don't know how the hell I slept at night with that, but yeah, I got a bunch of pictures here, and you know, I was medic in that camp, and the dispensary there was just probably the best one I've ever been at. The runway wasn't so great. I was at 235 Nunco, and I think they had a 3,000-foot all-weather runway that was paved. And then, yeah, I guess Tan Rai didn't have a medic, so they switched me over from Nunco to Tan Rai. And then, like I said, we turned that camp over to MacV. Just before we did that, Martha Ray came in. Remember her? I don't know if you guys ever, Maggie. She was a hell of a lady. I was amazed at how much that woman could drink. Unbelievable. And then from there, I went to Tuitar, which was a great duty. Yeah, my 3 camps, I enjoyed them all. I think the best one, as I said, was Tan Rai. You guys did a hell of a job putting that baby together. Thank you.
Mike Urkel was there just before you as a medic. And Mike, you got to turn your microphone on to respond.
There you go, Mike. It's on now.
I can, yeah. I'm Mike Urkel. I now live in Minnesota. I was a medic in Tan Rai in 68. I also did, after I did a week in Anlock when the medic went on R&R. I also did a week in Bandon, and then I finished up my tour in Tuitar. I had a couple stories. Anlock was probably the most beautiful AA camp I've ever seen when I'm flying into it along the river. And I got a story. A couple things happened. It was a beautiful dispensary. And I recall a FAC flew in one day, and the airfield was about, I suppose it was about 3 or 4 clicks away from the camp. And I drove out to the airfield to meet the FAC. Assumed they were coming in for lunch, and there was the pilot gets out of the FAC, and he just almost falls on the ground laughing. And the guy in the back, I think, was a physician, and he had on his helmet with the bubble helmet with the shield sunglasses in it. And apparently he'd put the shield down and tightened up the nut, and there was spaghetti hanging out of the bubble on his helmet. And so he went over to the stream or the river, and he washed himself out. I felt bad for the guy, but it was a beautiful camp. I had one little kid that somehow got a detonator out of a grenade or something, and had pulled the pin on it. He blew his 3 fingers off of his hand, and he had the thumb and the index finger left. And so I bandaged him and flew him up to Pleiku, I believe. And I never found out how he did.
Mike,
When I was in Tan Raya, our PSYOPs officer, new Lieutenant Tim Spring, was killed in an ambush, and we lost 9 people that day, and we had about 14 wounded, and it was I was the second one to go into the area and they ambushed the second one of us as well, and that was a pretty awful day, probably the worst day of my life. I went to PA school. I'm a physician assistant after I got out, and I did that for about 32 years. After I lost my job due to PTSD, I had the opportunity to go to Sri Lanka after the tsunami, and I went there for a month, and I got hooked on that experience. And I've done 19 other medical trips all over the world, including Africa is my main place, Uganda 13 times, and I've been in Haiti and Philippines, Lebanon, and Sri Lanka twice. So married third time is a charm, as you know, and that's my story, I guess. I'm an alcoholic. I'm 40 years sober, and SF was the defining moment of my life. It was a thing that I'm the most proud of. And I think, Louis, I think you came into Tan Rai right after I got sent to Tuitar. So
yeah, I think that makes sense. Who was the CO when you left? Hall?
Hall, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you,
New
a guy
Jersey.
you don't have. You remember there was a guy ahead of him called Cole, and he was a quartermaster, and he was a captain. He was a quartermaster, but he extended for 6 months to get an A camp, and so they sent him out to an A camp, and then Hall was the XO, and then he got to be a CO. Was it Chung Wei To? Was he the LLDB senior camp? He was, anyway. We used to play a lot of poker with him, and I was there with Dorcas, and trying to remember the weapons guy. Davis was the weapons man, and Coop was the one I relieved, and most of those guys had already gone, or
Hey, Michael,
already were probably by the time.
Who was the Vietnamese cook there?
They called
First name?
they called him Peckerhead.
Yeah, there you go.
He hated it. I called him by his mountain yard name. So yeah.
That's a dispensary, Mike. I don't know if you.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a dispensary that Coop built that.
Yeah, we had the same
You
cook.
gotta-
We had Cookie and Peckerhead.
Well,
Oh,
Cook
man.
Peckerhead wasn't really a cook. He was like a KP.
There's
we-
Peckerhead.
Yeah.
And, Ray,
Oh,
Ray, you remember this?
Oh yeah. That's
Yep.
our camp right there.
Yep. Do you
may-
remember?
Wow.
Yeah.
You
Damn
remember
right.
Wash Lady? There
Huh?
was a little young wash lady named Carone, and her husband was a CID, and he'd been killed on before I got there. And my medic was Kaji, and the Vietnamese got into that dispensary, called over the wall, and stole a bunch of meds. And when we were on a sweep of the village just on the way to Baulock, we found the meds in the house, and it was and they were strikers. They were strikers in the camp, and we had a little discussion about them. And they so they went down and searched my medic house, and they found a vial of penicillin that he'd taken out of there. He said, I keep that in my house because if I don't, in the dispensary down here, they steal it. So yeah, it was. So we had to let him go. He left, and that was sad. He was a good medic, and he'd been a striker and been a good one. I got one more story I want to share with you, and then I'll shut up. I decided that down in the village beside the airfield down there, that the sanitation was poor. So I talked him into building some outhouses with, a huge outhouse with, pit squatty holes. And we had about, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them in there. And one day I decided that it was time to move it. So I had him dig another hole next to it, and I had him move the shed house over to the new hole. Well, when I looked in the old hole, here was a rat down the bottom of the hole. And so having my 45 with me, man, I'm gonna blast this rat, right? So I take careful aim at this rat and I shoot, and you know what happened there? I blew shit all over, got it on me, and it was, I think the yards are probably still laughing about that one, but it wasn't all.
45 kick a lot of shit around.
Anyway,
All
you
right.
bet. So anyway,
All right.
that's enough out of me. Thank you all for showing up today, and thank you all for your sacrifice. I appreciate it. And I'm going to have to sign off right now because I'm with my daughter. Okay. And
Well, this is National Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day or something. So
yes,
for all of us, there it is.
there it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Yep.
it.
I love
Thank you very
all
much.
you guys. Bye.
Also, I have a website besides specialforcesbooks.com. I have a website, specialforcesphotos.com. And if you go up
Okay.
there and sign in, use your name. Don't give me
Okay.
a little handle. I want to know who you are.
Okay.
But Michael Urkel. And you
Right.
sign in there. I recognize your name. You'll
Yep.
get a note back in a couple of days or maybe the same day saying you're approved. And you can go there and post stuff up there. And
Okay.
there's a spot for every camp in Vietnam.
Okay.
So
There's one other guy, Steve, I want to tell you about. His name was Gutbrod, and he was, I think he was a PSYOPs officer. I don't know if you have him or not, but he
Yeah.
I think Paul was gone, and somebody landed that had some birds on their shoulder or or whatever. And he said, do you want the bullshit orientation? He said, or do you want some class 6? And that was the last we saw of him. Guy didn't have a sense of humor, apparently. So thank you much.
He is deceased. Good
Thank
brother
you, Michael.
passed away.
He
All
did
right,
pass away. Okay.
I'm talking about other people on the camp that are not with us anymore. Bill, you were followed by a guy named Alexander Einselm. And Einselm ended up as the either Minister of Defense or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in Estonia or somewhere like that.
Yeah. Estonia.
No kidding.
Kind
I'd
of
forgotten his name. Yeah.
interesting note. He's no longer with us either, nor is Ruggles. So nor is Sammy Carr. So it took a toll of the earlier officers there at this camp.
Good to know. Thank you.
All right. I want to tell you, Steve, can I relay one
Yeah.
story which pertains to everybody? This has to do with the day that Jim Neighbors and I left, about February 24th, 1967. Now, what happened was I got a call. I was already checking out up in, I don't know, probably Nha Trang. And I heard that there's a big battle at Tan Rai. That's what I heard. And so I wanted to go back, even though I had a day or two left and I was going to hop on the airplane. And so what I found out was, here's the story. There's an Air Force captain, name is Will Banks, Hilliard Will Banks. And he received a Medal of Honor. Now, can you imagine an Air Force guy receiving a Medal of Honor? Well, it happened on February 24th, 1967. And you can look up the Medal of Honors, and he's probably one of the few Air Force guys, but he was one of our facts. We had Will Banks and Willoughby. Willoughby and Will Banks. Those were our two facts. And they would come in and take a break, have coffee with us, shoot the shit and all that stuff. And they really loved our camp because they could land there with their little, they had a little propeller thing. What's that thing called?
L-19.
Bird dog. It's bird dog.
There you go. There you go. So L-19 and the OV-1 and whatever in the hell. So what happened was the Ranger Battalion, I guess they were Lac Long Doc Viet. They were coming up the highway 2020, whichever one that is, up by Balak. And they were about to get ambushed. And Hilliard Wilbanks was flying over, and he saw this about to occur. And so he called down, he tried to call everybody, he couldn't get a hold of anybody. They wouldn't answer the phone, they wouldn't answer the radio, whatever. And they kept walking into this ambush. And they would have got decimated had they gone all the way into the ambush. He could see that from the air. So what does he do? He didn't have much armament. You know, he goes down and flies and shoots all the armament he's got. And he finally hanging out the window, shooting his M16 and dropping grenades and crap like that. And for that, he got a Medal of Honor. So that's an Air Force guy at our camp, well, close to our camp, related to, he would fly in on it. Jim, do you remember Wilbanks and Willoughby, the fact?
Yeah, I gave him, I had a, I'm trying to think, 11 millimeter pistol. I can't think what it was now.
Oh,
And I gave that to him.
wow.
And he might have been using that day.
But he would have had to, yeah.
Yeah,
Boy,
but
that's a story you can tell your grandkids and great
oh yeah,
grandkids.
well, I didn't know that he got the Medal of Honor. I had never heard that.
No shit. Well, I wanted to make sure everybody heard that, because you can go look it up now and read.
He was a nice guy, and he was always there for you. We called him in a couple of times when we're out on operation.
Yeah, anytime we get in trouble, we just look up in the sky and call them, and there they'd be. Either Willoughby or Wilbanks. One or the other would be there.
Wilbanks.
I remember, yeah, they were great, those fat guys. They were there. I remember damn Perk 25, you couldn't talk more than 3 miles away and get anybody, you know. So when you went out on those operations, you just called those guys because they were always there. So
Frank,
Yo,
there was an operation down south, north of Boon Hole, but south of us. Shortly after I left the camp, I was in Saigon as ASO for 2 Corps, and it was a pretty good battle. And somebody had come into Saigon. They usually would stop and see me from the team, and I don't remember which team member it was, but he told me this story about an operation south there where the sentries all of a sudden saw a whole bunch of VC coming down the path. They were bivouacked just outside a village, and it was, they think it was North Vietnamese. But anyway, Sergeant Wheeler was the big star in that.
yeah.
And as I remember the story, and that was quite a thing. Do you can you add any details to that? I always thought
No, because when I got, that happened just before I got there. But Wheeler got the Silver Star on that. I know that.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, that one happened, him and I believe it was Decker was with him, the medic.
Yeah.
I think those two were the two that were out on that operation there when that happened. But no, when I got there, it was pretty quiet. We didn't have anything until we hit a friggin' revolt.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they were talking about facts on that thing. The fact we had.
Ray, do you remember when we got a bunch of boger wheat? They sent it out there. We got a bunch of boger wheat, and the mountain yards wouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
So we took it and built a dam with it.
Yeah.
Dammed up and made a fish pond for them there.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you know, at that time, I hate to admit it, but I think we were trying to convert them into business people and,
Yeah.
and be like us. And we had him go make all those flags, Viet Cong flags and crossbows and crap. So anytime visitors would come in, we'd say, oh, by the way, the locals built these things that if you're interested, we could probably sell them. They would sell them to you.
Yeah.
And so they would get all this money. They wouldn't know what to do with it. I mean, how crazy we were trying to convert them into our style of living and business operation.
There wasn't much to buy out there, I'll tell you.
Well, you weren't crazy. First of all, Special Forces probably produced more VC flags than the VC did.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
And second of all, there may not have been a commercial value to it from the people in your camp, but in most camps that I've talked to, the trading value with the other people. Chicken blood was a little extra with the flag.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You threw some blood on there.
That's how you ate.
Hey, you remember?
So
The guys were down in the train. We're down in the train on a scavenger, get us some food, and they stole a whole pallet of dehydrated shrimp. Got it back to the camp. The next day we got a message that somebody had stolen these shrimp. They were for Thanksgiving for the troops. But we ate shrimp for about a month there. Dehydrated shrimp.
I remember
it
some
was
steaks.
It was at Thanksgiving in '66.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, those team sergeants, or at least the team sergeants that I met over there, did a pretty good job of keeping us fed. But during the monsoon season, I remember just having to eat those indigenous rations.
Oh yeah.
Remember those things, a pack of rice and.
Yeah.
Well, you take the rice and mix it in with it and carry it until noon that day, and it'd be ready to eat.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. You carried it right in your pants leg. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Speaking of the rainy season, the monsoon season, I got one little story that where I almost got anointed as the dumbest. Had it turned out otherwise, I would have been known as the dumbest cluck in Vietnam. But during the previous rainy season in '64, Gillespie's team had they couldn't fly the rice in anymore because of the weather. So he had a convoy that went into Bao My Tuot, about 40 kilometers south, to pick up the rice. And they, on their way back the next day, they were ambushed about halfway back and really got shellacked. I understand there were about 20 or 30 Montagnards killed in that. And but there was they had a 3/4 ton truck with somehow they'd fashioned a gun shield or a shield for the machine gun, and they dashed out from camp and drove them off. And that was the story that was told. So anyway, here comes the rainy season in 1965, and the same situation, can't fly in the rice and so forth. So the thing was, okay, how do we avoid that sort of an ambush? And I had been reading just in my spare time, and I had more than I'd want to admit, the book on the desert rats, and the title of it was "Who Dares Wins." So that I have to think that influenced me. I didn't make a direct correlation at the time, but got with the camp commander and we said, we worked it out. He agreed to it, which is tremendous in retrospect, that we would go out, the normal convoy into Bao My Tuot, assuming there would be trail watchers and waiting for our return. So we decided we'd come back that night. And so we did. We left, we got the rice, and instead of the troops going into town and having a ball and then convoy back the next day, which was the pattern, we just drove about 10:30 at night or so. We mustered everybody and drove back. And we had an L-19 for communication for a few miles out of Bamituit, and then we had nothing, no radio contact with anybody. And we got back, no incidents, whatever, except that one truck broke down for a short time. Got back into camp about 2 or 3 in the morning and put everything away and went about our business. And 2 days later, one of the yards was in Bamituit on a little R&R pass, and he came back, and the camp commander gathered me up and told me, he said the striker there had told him that as he was trying to leave Bamituit and come back to Buon Brieng, there was a roadblock, and apparently it was the VC, and he explained it that they were waiting for the convoy from Buon Brieng to head back to Buon Brieng, and we'd been back a day and a half, But had that gone wrong, as I say, I would have been the dumbest cluck in Vietnam. But my reasoning was that as we went through the Special Forces course, you learn to think like a guerrilla, and they're going to stay away from the roads, and they're going to be back off the road at night. They probably would move based on the intelligence to their ambush position around noon or maybe mid-morning. But otherwise, they're not going to be in a conspicuous spot by the road. They're back in their jungle hideout. So I just made a kind of a pull it out of my butt assumption that it was probably safer than you would think to drive through no man's land with headlights on in the middle of the night. And the only people that were upset was the Buon Ho RFPF or whatever was manning that little station. They were kind of wondering what the hell was going on. But it just shows that sometimes you could outfox those guys. And the camp commander and I really got a chuckle out of that. And, but like I say, had it gone wrong, anyway, that's the story.
I've got
Guys.
one, if you want to hear it, then it's about go ahead, Steve.
Steve, you're muted.
Steve, take it off of mute.
You're muted, Steve. You're muted.
Got it. If you click on the chat button, if you haven't already done so, I just sent out to everybody a copy of the Silver Star for Wheeler.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Hey, fantastic.
Guys, I'm going to shove off. Happy Vietnam Veterans Day. Thank you guys for your service. Stephen, thank you very much for putting this together. I'm glad you organized it. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you guys for making such a great camp at Tan Rai so I could keep my ass nice and warm. Or cool, however you want to look at it.
All right.
Good to see you, Louis. Take care.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to tell you about being a dumb camp commander. I'm fessing up now for the first time in my life. Well, probably other people have talked about it, but anyhow, this guy came in and said, we got the best intelligence in the world. And it was in the fall of 1966. Jim, you were there, I think. And what happened was this guy was supposed to be the best spy in the world, and everybody, I guess we were working with a CIA guy. The CIA guy brought him in. I was real good relations with the captain down in Balak. He was CIA. And he said, this guy, you can believe him. He said there was going to be a major meeting of the VIPs of North Vietnam. And I think they call it COSFON or something like that, whatever it was. But it was supposed to be in RAO in Tan Rai, west of Tan Rai. So I assimilated that knowledge and I reported it to Bud Gillette, B team commander, my boss. And all of a sudden I'm standing in front of Kelly, Blackjack Kelly. And he said, I want to get in on this. You know, I want to go out there with battalion of special forces, 2 battalion special forces, all that stuff. And so then all of a sudden I'm up at wherever our 2-corps commander is. He's a 2-star general. I'm standing in front of his desk and telling him what's going on. And by the way, Bob Cavedras was the S2 of the Nha Trang overall special forces in Vietnam. So he worked for Kelly. And he always warned me, he said, now, when you go on and talk to Kelly, you want to do this, all that stuff. And so he was the S2, he was the intel officer. So he kept it on track. Anyhow, what happened was, bottom line was, they chose 2 battalions of the 101st, and they chose 1 battalion of special forces. Those 3 battalions went into the area in Tan Rai, west of Tan Rai, to be there and disrupt this whole meeting they were going to have. One of the major meetings of the North Vietnamese, you know, the VIPs all coming down. Lee Doc To and the works. So the night before, I'm in my camp and everybody's ready to go, and we have contributed our part of it. But the Mike Force was the battalion they chose out of Nha Trang. And I forget, Williams, I think, was the commander of the Mike Force, probably a captain. So I know because his lieutenant got killed and came through our camp. Jim Neighbors put him on an airplane, and that was Lieutenant Nespazani.
Yeah.
Nespazani was dead, and he came through our camp the next day. So anyhow, the night before, this is what I want to point out. These Mohawks came in flying, and what the fuck are those things out there, those lights? Oh, those are the Mohawks. They're taking pictures of the area. Duh. Well, what happens with anytime you put, but we bombed the hell out of the place, B-52 bombs before we went in. And anytime there's a report, anytime there's a B-52 bombing, it has to go up through, get approval from the other side, the Loc Long Doc Viet, you know, the other guys. And sure enough, that word got out and they did not have the meeting. Well, we flew in the next morning. I was in with Colonel Collins. He was a battalion commander, 101st. And there was another guy, Dietrich. He had the other battalion, 101st. And then Williams had the special forces outfit, 3 battalions. We hit the ground with the helicopters and all that shit. And, you know, we recon by fire coming in and blasted up the whole place. We got some return fire. There were some idiots, Viet Cong, that didn't get the word, I guess, and they were still there firing back at us. And we went in and we scoured the whole area. The B-52s came in first, of course. We came in with the helicopters, the 3 battalions, and we scoured the area and all that stuff. We didn't find anything. And Nespazani got killed going down a trail, and they had one of those. They had a bomb.
What happened on Nespazani? He was coming back, and he returned on the same route he took in. And Sergeant Coon warned him, said, I would not do that. And lo and behold, they ran into a big mine, homemade mine.
Homemade bomb, yeah.
Homemade mine that homemade claymore, you might say.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it blew him right half in 2.
Yeah. When he got to our camp, he was hardly recognizable. I mean,
yeah,
when
I got up on the helicopter, I looked down. Of course, I knew him in Germany in the tents.
Yeah, me too.
He was just Spec 4, I think, at the time in Germany.
Yeah.
And when I got up there and got up on the helicopter, I saw his face and all of his parts. I mean, that was terrible, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I guess he got a battlefield commission, and he was a first lieutenant when he got
killed. Yeah, when he got killed, yes, he was.
He was the XO. he married one of the German girls over there, and she
Did he?
she
Yeah,
got
well,
a lot of
he
money
was,
out of it, I guess. But
Myers too was over there at the same time. You remember Myers from Germany? I can't remember his first name.
I don't know, but Jim, I remember when I got shrapnel and I went over to the field hospital, 18th Field Hospital in Trang.
Yeah.
I did not write to the wife, for several days or whatever, a week or whatever. And the guy that flew the helicopter, this is strangest thing in the world. The guy that flew the helicopter went on R&R the next day. And where does he go? He goes to Bad Tolz, Germany. Well, that's where my wife was.
Yeah.
And so he told his wife what happened to me. He medevaced me into Nha Trang. And I'm sitting there in bed, not even suspecting that my wife would hear about this thing. And his wife told my wife, said, "Oh, how's your husband? I heard he went to the hospital." And that shit hit the fan. And then meanwhile, I wrote, the Red Cross gives you these little letters to write on when you're in the hospital.
Yeah.
So I wrote a note and I said, "By the way, I'm fine, and this is what happened, major, minor upset along the trail. I'm fine." And then she received that about a week later. So she was 1 week of worry, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Stress, battlefield stress. I don't know what
Yeah,
that
yeah. Mhm.
But
Now,
anyhow,
you remember Lee Myers, don't you?
Lee Myers. Oh yeah, he would tell stories all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you a story if you don't tell the same one. Go ahead.
No, I don't. That's I just remember him from Germany and Nespizani.
Well, Lee Myers got the Medal of Honor over in Korea. And by the way, Jim Neighbors, you were in Korea, right?
Yeah, I was with the 2nd Infantry Division in Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went over and I was with the 82nd. I was supposed to go to Airborne 187. And
Yeah.
when I got into Korea, I guess they needed some cannon fodder over in Korea, so they sent me over to the 2nd Infantry Division.
Well, Lee Myers would come into the club there in Bambituit, and we were in there drinking one time. Every month we'd have a monthly meeting, and we were sitting in Bambituit at the club, and Lee Myers was sitting there drinking beer with me and everybody else. And this the adjutant came in, and he said, "Lee, I got a Purple Heart for you." And so he walked over to Lee to give him the Purple Heart, the official certificate or whatever the hell it is. And Lee just took it and he tore it up. He said, "If my wife hears about that, I'm in deep cockeye." That was about his 13th Purple Heart or something like that. I don't know what it was. Maybe not 13th, but he had several of them before that time. Medal of Honor winner in Korea.
He had got the Medal of Honor.
He told us about that too. He sat in Korea when they got overrun up at Busan and whatever, and he happened to be in a culvert, and he backed up into the culvert and just sat there. And then the Chinese tried to get in during the Korean War. He killed about 21 of them, I guess, he alone. And he was the only guy in the culvert. So he was just defending himself. And he came out and he got the Medal of Honor. You can probably look it up. I haven't looked it up in a long time, but that's kind of the way I remember it. And that's the way he told the story too. So.
Hey, Frank, tell us a little about the mountain yard, the full road takeover of the camp. I was always curious to hear a little more. How did that actually come on?
Well, when Jen Giesentanner and I come back in from an operation, like I said, and I had a blood clot in my leg. But at that time, there was notes put on Captain Ruggles' bunk saying that they need to talk to Sherry, and they had him by name. He was the intel. So he come back in, and the group that was out there When Cherry went out there, he took Jimmy, the interpreter, with him. And they had a talk. The major wanted some radios and he wanted some ammunition. And Cherry told him, he said they couldn't do that. And I believe that was on a Friday night. Saturday, they had another note on Captain Ruggles' bunk, wanting to talk to Cherry again. Well, Ruggles said no, he wouldn't let him go back out. And, you know, Monday morning, we all went back out there and saluted the Vietnamese flag as it went back up. They had the formation went back up, and that's when the Chimpa flag went back up the pole. And they found out that they were already in the camp. They had the LLDB all tied up and told Captain Ruggles that he wasn't going to disarm them, but they could not carry the weapons in camp. But that time I got back into the B team and I heard on the radio, they had a SSB radio talking to Captain Ruggles. And he said, well, he said, I can't say too much right now. He says, we're being monitored on the radio. And the colonel, I believe it was Colonel Croft, told him, he said, well, he says to go back in and get the gas mask. We're going to gas the camp. Ruggles come back in about 10 minutes later and he said, well, all the gas masks have been taken out of the mess hall. And he said, they're all in the machine gun bunkers by Fuller Row. So they stopped that. And as Jan Giesentanner told me, he said the next message was they were going to bring in a show of force and they were going to bomb around the camp and that way they could get out. And Ruggles said, you bomb the camp, I'm going with Fuller Row. So that ended that thing. Then they were going to bring the 173rd back in to storm the camp. And before that plan could get put into effect up there, Fuller Row walked out of the camp. They took all the ammunition and we had a ammunition and weapons for a new company. They took all of that out. After it was all said and done, they brought the team back in and Captain Ruggles told us that Jimmy had been taken back into the Vietnamese. He was a lieutenant in the Fuller Row movement and he was a chief interpreter. That's how we were getting all the good intelligence. Hell, they were feeding it to Jimmy.
Jimmy
So that was the last we saw.
Cricket was the interpreter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how the notes kept getting on Captain Ruggles' book out there.
I'll be darned.
Putting them on there.
Hmm.
But no, everything I heard was from the team when they come back in. Like I say, I wasn't there when that happened. I was back in the hospital and come back out to the B team. I gave Ruggles not Ruggles, but Colonel Croft a handwritten layout of the camp on how they were going to do it. And I'm kind of glad that the Fuller Row left back out. That was the camp they were going to come back in. They were going to come in from the airfield. And the airfield that was pretty well defended from inside the camp. The camp was, they would have lost a lot of people going back into that thing if that had gone back in. I don't think they'd have got the team out if they'd done it. But no, it was.
I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you putting this thing together, Steve. And I'll be in touch later, maybe. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jim, for coming in. Really appreciate it. And
Steve, I won't have to go too. I've got my wife. I got to take her to the hospital to get a stitch taken out of her eye. She had a cataract taken out last week.
oh,
So I'm going to sign out. Thank you much. And listen, if you do come back up here to Lubbock, you got my phone number. Give me a call and I'll come back out and come out the house and have a cup of coffee.
Well, I had time to do that.
Or whatever.
Ways out there long, but you might find yourself very interested in the seminars we've got out there.
Yeah, I would like to see that. Do they have after action reports in there?
All of the seminars are videoed for years.
Okay.
Up there, so you can look back over each year, subject, lots of stuff there.
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of curious on the one operation they had up there where we lost wood, and I was kind of curious on that after.
If you have any problems, give me a call and I'll point you in the right direction.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one. Steve, thank you much for putting this together. Appreciate it. All y'all have a good one, and thank all of y'all for coming back home.
Yeah,
you.
they show you the 12 volume set, 14 volume set of books that we did.
Uh-huh.
We had one for each year uh, on the whole of the Vietnam War,
Uh-huh.
on the Second Indochina War, and a whole set of very interesting stuff, which is not all about special forces, but there's a sizable amount of special forces stuff in there. Because and I chose what went in.
Oh, great. All right. Well, I'm out of here, so we'll talk to y'all later. Have a good one now.
Very
Hey,
good.
Frank, before you go, I
Yeah.
want to make sure we get in touch. So Steve, put me in touch with Frank and Bill.
You got the emails on the mail I sent out.
Okay,
Everybody's email shows there.
you two guys will hear from me because you did most of the talking and wonderful stories. I loved them. So I want to
tell you-
hear more.
I tell you, after 4 trips over there, I had 2 TDYs and 2 PCSs, 3 of them with the group and then 1 of them with MACV. So
Oh, boy.
Two
it was-
tours, one Vietnam,
seeing-
one special forces, and then the other, I was with a leg battalion. I was the operations officer of the leg battalion. I was a major then. And we went into Cambodia. So that was the period of time I was there, 69 and 70.
Yeah, when you were in there, I was on R&R in Hawaii with the wife.
Yeah, of course. For
I heard about you guys going to Cambodia.
Oh,
I won't tell you what I said, but I said, but it's
right. Yeah.
here we go.
Uh-huh.
Well, good to see you, Frank. And
Okay, y'all have a good one now. Good talking to you. Bye-bye.
thank you.
Anyway,
Thanks so much.
Uh-huh.
Well, Bill,
Steve, yeah, Steve, I was going to say before we wind it up, you and I thought your name looked familiar when I saw the email, and I pulled out a folder, and apparently you had given me or sent me by email the story of Buon, Brieng, the full row aspect of it. It was an extract from a book, one you wrote, possibly.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And I had a note I acquired 10/6/99, Stephen Sherman, email. So yeah, it did sound familiar, but that's a very detailed account of that takeover. And so I wish I would have brought that up when Frank was still on, but quite interesting.
yeah. Well, for a long time, I've been putting together records, mostly stuff that I found in the archives, and putting them together into packages on CD-ROM, because most of the time it was too big for any single book to hold. And while the stuff is in the archives, not that many people go there and make a trip to get it.
Yeah,
So they're
yeah.
not going to get a chance to read it. And Ray was out there with me on one occasion, and he saw that was what was going on there. I had another guy who went with me one time, and he said it was a lot of fun, but don't call me again unless everybody else is dead or wounded.
Well, I think it's great that you're doing this, the historical, you're tracking the history and compiling it. This is a fantastic thing that'll endure for centuries, and really great.
Well, I
And
hope so, but
post these things too.
it's important that people read it, and that's
Yeah.
the hardest part. I can produce all day, but getting people to read it or buy it is much more difficult.
Yeah.
That 14 volume set on the overall Vietnam War, there's a collection of essays, probably 12 essays for each year on different parts of that year that usually are misreported or underreported or whatever. And somebody at Texas A&M noted it as Sherman's iconic series. I have no idea what he meant. He didn't explain that at all.
Well, it
But
is.
it's very work to take a long time how to read so that they can find out what happened to the. So fortunate that isn't there, and we're I'm in a group of people that call ourselves the Vietnam Veterans for Factual History. We have websites and videos and all kinds of stuff out there. But we've been protesting to PBS about the programs they've been running, and they won't give us the time of day to respond to them. And that here was last night, and it was totally screwed up as far as history is concerned. Right now, there's a group called the Vietnam Peace Commission, Vietnam Peace Commemoration Commission, and they want to be recognized for their efforts to end the Vietnam War. And I've written a number of articles willing to recognize you for what you did to get Congress to pull the plug out of funding of the war. But you got to take the blame for what came after. And we're getting no traction on that. And so we're trying to get.
Steve, your video is frozen, but we're hearing you okay. But on my screen, you're frozen. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it.
And the audio's not coming in garbled too.
Yeah, it's a little broken.
That teach the Vietnam War today. They were protesters in the war. What they teach is totally wrong. So, what do we do about that? Because that affects what we have today. We have people who have such an idea about the Vietnam War that they do things in their life that's going to hurt my grandchildren in the future, just the way they're looking at this country. I mean, whatever happened to freedom of speech? And I say, if I complain about the election, I can get banned from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's free speech. I remember the old joke about the guy who said there was a Russian and American talking. The American said, "Look, in my country, I can say my president is an asshole, and I don't get into trouble for it." And the Russian says, "Yeah, I can call your president an asshole too."
Well, I'm thinking that. I don't know if you can see this hat, but
I can see the hat.
people
Yes.
ask me, where did you get it? And my answer is Hanoi. After retiring from the military, I worked with DOD-IG, and there was some kind of a congressional inquiry as to the POW MIA handling, or the U.S. team that's in Hanoi. So I got sent over there along with a Vietnamese young lady, part of that group that exited in '72. So got to go to the Ministry of Defense, and I'm sitting there with this Vietnamese girl, and the guy, the old colonel sitting back of the desk there, says, "Well, have you ever been to Vietnam before?" And I said, "Well, yes, I visited the South, but I wasn't able to get my visa approved for the North." He looked at me for a second, and he busted out laughing because he figured it out. But we had a hell of a time getting our visa approved for that DOD-IG team to go, and that's, I guess, why that flipped into my mind.
Wow.
But you know, they were warm. There was no. This was '96. They were warm. All kinds of military gear being hawked out to street vendors. You know, all the stuff they'd captured and what have you. It was on the street for sale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been back there since '96?
No, not at all.
I've been back about 5 times, I guess, or more, from my work. But I started in 1998, and then from then forward to probably about 2011.
Oh yeah.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, I recognize that.
That's from 1990. My trip in 1997. I got
Okay.
a whole bunch of them. And just as we did during the war itself, uh, I turned a bit of a profit on it.
Uh-huh.
Small things like that. And
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's the right stuff.
I don't see any holes in it though, or I don't see any blood on it.
chicken blood is extra.
You were saying, Ray, were you back last time there, Ray, was when?
Yeah, I was lecturing, started off in 98 and I lectured in Saigon. That there's a famous high school there. And we used that venue. I forget who, if I said the name, you'd know it, but that was the first time over there. And then since then, I took my wife over there, took my son over there on another visit on 2004 or something like that. And what I've seen is, as far as the economy, they're doing much better than China. And you know how precipitously China has grown economically, you know, to be the number 2 in the world today, I guess. They jumped up above Japan and what have you. But Vietnam will be that way in the future. Vietnam, see, they still have the workers of the mid-level workers and the young people coming along. So their population rate is good. China's population rate is horrible, going the other way, you know, with that one child concept and then a 2-child concept, now 3, and now as many as you can get. Well, it's too late. They've already destroyed their population growth in China, I'm talking about. But I probably made about, I'll say 6 trips to Vietnam since 1998.
Wow.
And my wife loves it over there. She'd go back in a minute if I could figure out a way to go back again. Sam Lee and Lee, my interpreter, is over there now, and it's early in the morning, I guess, because I thought he would actually wake up and join in on this. But he was the interpreter there at Tan Rai for a while, and then he went to Bamituit, and then Cam Ranh Bay. And then he escaped in 1979 with his family. He was one of the boat people. He made it over to Philippines, Palawan, Philippines, I think it was. Anywho, I just want to know if Steve has not gone back to Vietnam. Steve is kind of prejudiced. Even though
I went back there in 96.
Vietnamese, he will not go back.
I went back.
That's what I mean. Since then, you haven't
I haven't gone
been back since then. Yeah. What was your impression in 96, Steve?
Look, I rented a house next to a police station. And I've done a lot of traveling around Asia before this time. And I would deal with people. I play all kinds of chess variations that are local. In Vietnam, they have a variation that's basically Chinese variation on chess. And I normally would go out in the evening or somewhere, and I'd play chess with locals. It didn't matter if I won or lost. They were impressed that I could play their form.
Wow.
And normally I would have been inside the police station playing chess with these guys. But over there, every morning they're out craning their necks on the roof of the police station, trying to see what was going on in my compound. And I got this distinct impression.
Were you in the CIA? Were you in the CIA?
No, I was over there.
Were you
with my wife? She was going there, and so I rented a house. The lady renting a house was a North Vietnamese carpetbagger who had 5 empty houses in Saigon, and the cost of renting it. I said, I can't rent this house for you. It has no refrigerator. She says, you pay for the refrigerator. I'll buy it. That's your rent.
Wow. Yeah.
The house was bank money. You put your money in the bank, the inflation will eat it. But you own the house, didn't matter if it just sat there. You make money on it.
Yeah,
So
true.
I went there.
Um,
My wife did all the talking she did, and I was stayed there and did some shopping. I came home with a suitcase full of maps in one of those stores that had military equipment. I came there and I saw maps. I said, okay, let's go through it. And I had every store around bringing me maps till I got a complete set. 288 maps of
Wow.
South Vietnam. I won over 50,000. I did not buy, I should have, I didn't buy the North Vietnamese one over 100,000. I regret that ever since. But
yeah,
since I went and bought
bet.
those maps, they decided they had some value. And other people who went back there told me that they were going for a very high rate.
You know, you have to think
That's great
sometimes,
stuff.
I'm sure you all have, is what did we do? What did we accomplish? And was it worth it? And before going into the philosophy on that, which I won't anyway, I'm still an avid outdoor type and have a bunch of guys that were leftover scout dads, and we stayed active among ourselves, even though the scouts had moved on in our local troop. And so we still go out in the Blue Ridge and backpack overnight hikes, and trying to gin one up for next month. But the difference, I just had to reflect on this, that umpteen years ago in Vietnam, I was hiking the woods and bush in Vietnam with a U.S. made rucksack, and now I'm hiking the U.S. hills with a rucksack made in Vietnam, and it's a damn good one too. It doesn't cost that much either. So I guess philosophically, was it worth it?
Well,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a little file here, which I had put together for this Texas Tech Conference and the this VPPC deal. Let's see here.
I'm going to go hit the head. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have your chat button pushed there? Chat screen up?
Chat.
Down the bottom of the screen.
Oh yeah, I see it. Okay.
Click on that.
It says show chat previews.
Well, you can, there are two files I've set up that you
Oh.
can download.
There's a chat. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Let's
The
see.
first one is the one I was just talking about. The one
Yeah.
before that was the Silver Star.
Yep.
Wheeler.
So that
So if you go to the little three buttons next to that, you can download it.
oh, okay. Do I want to do that now or hold off, or because it might block you out?
You probably need to do it now because you open it up
Okay.
and save it on your computer.
Oh,
because I think
I
you
can
turn
save
off.
it. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
I'll
back.
do
Yeah,
that.
you need to do it now.
Okay. It gives me a choice of copy or quote. So let's see what's happening.
Open file. Open
Huh.
the file for you, and then just say what opens.
Yeah.
They're PDF files.
Oh, okay. There it is.
An open letter and a challenge to Vietnam Peace Commemoration Committee. Fantastic. Yeah, that's a wonderful letter. Steve wrote that, and it really brings light to what that outfit is trying to do.
And
Great
to the
job.
war itself.
Good job.
Is this
Yeah, I haven't got it.
Well, the PDF is the Silver Star.
well, both of them are PDFs?
I'm gonna
The
try it
other's
again.
a document. The other's a document.
Oh, it is?
Doc, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Doc.
I'm not getting anything
I
on
thought
my,
I made a PDF.
I'm not
If you
getting
have a
anything
P-
on my screen that shows it. If the end of this, maybe I would ask if you could send that to me some way in a document or the PDF. Could someone do that? I can't seem to get it off the screen here.
That's because it's a Word document, doc.
Okay.
Here it is again. Is my thing.
There it
That's
is
the
in a
right one.
PDF form.
No, it's not. That's not the right one. No, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's a PDF file.
Is that the
Yeah.
VPCC PDF?
Yeah. Click on
Okay.
that and see if it opens up, and then you just save it. Now, there are two other things that you brought to mind about being outdoorsy. Alan Buckaloo, who you may know, because he was probably your time in Vietnam, intelligence type. But he participated in the Hanoi to Saigon bicycle race that they had, some years ago. And so that was his story. What was the other one I was going to mention?
I took the bus from Saigon to Hanoi, and that wore my butt out. So I can't imagine going on a bicycle from Hanoi to Saigon. I guess they went down Highway 1, whatever that coastal road. But yeah, it took me, well, I took my time. I took about 5 days because I wanted to stay all night. I went up to a certain place, stayed in Nha Trang one night and so on, all the way up the coast. That was insightful. I did that after one of my lectures over there, and I had plenty of free time, and I said, well, shit, I might as well visit the country while I'm here. So I hopped in the bus. I tried to ship everything back. That was an experience in itself. Neil Olson, who is that? Hello, Neil.
Neil is a guest that I invited. He was an enlisted guy in Bao Loc with the advisory team there. And he got very much involved with the locals and somewhat of a linguist in the Kaho language.
Wow.
And he is a regular that attends things out in Texas Tech.
Mhm.
So he was in Bao Loc during his tour in Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked very closely with a captain down there, CIA. I forget his name, but boy, he was wonderful. So, Neil, you might. Well, I was there from 66 to 67.
Neil,
Yeah,
your microphone is on. That's your camera.
let's see. Start video. What should I be hitting?
Down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a bunch of icons in the black area.
Oh, yeah.
And the one that says camera, if it has a line through it, click on it. The line will go away.
Okay, maybe. I don't see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry I'm late.
Hi, Neil.
You are late. I don't know if you heard me explaining to Bill and Ray your background.
Oh, okay.
Both of these are two survivors of our session, which is about ready to close up. But both of them
Yeah.
were the detachment commanders of this camp at different times. Bill actually was at Buon, which was a predecessor camp in 66, 65. Yeah, 65. And Ray was at Tan Rai in 67.
66 and 67, yeah.
Camps there.
When were you there, Neil?
I was there from October of 67 till about July of 68. And I was with the 4th Infantry Division, and I was attached to MAC V Team 38. And I was training, we were a combined team training in regional forces. So we'd go out with the regional forces and just 2 or 3 Americans and indigenous, and we'd go out and train them. So that was interesting.
Wow, what a job.
Yeah, it was, I thought it'd be better than being out in the field. I was in, up in Pleiku on the Cambodian border for about 2 months. I got really sick in the jungle. And so I thought, well, I'll be better off on an advisory team. It turns out that, the casualty rate on that was even higher, but I was really lucky. The province, as you well know, was pretty well held by the NLF at that point, except for along the Highway 20. So, and they'd blow bridges and do stuff, but we'd go out and check stuff as well as we could.
What was the name of who was the commander of the advisory detachment?
Captain Miller, Paul Mueller.
Ray, does that ring a bell?
No, there's a Miller that replaced me.
No.
These are MACV people.
Yeah, I don't remember the names.
How many captains were on the detachment in Bowlock?
There was a colonel in charge of the province, lieutenant colonel, maybe a colonel.
I think it was Paul Miller in 67, 68. Yeah.
Well, he had dealings with a guy he thinks was a CIA guy, but he's just probably a Phoenix advisor on that advisory team.
Do you know who was before Mueller?
No, I don't. I could look it up, but I don't know right offhand. No.
I've got a picture of him. He came up to one of our, we had a celebration up in Tan Rai one time, and he was the guest of honor.
Oh, wow.
So, my name is Stephen Sherman.
He came up, and I've got a picture, but I forget his name. But Mueller doesn't sound right to me. So
he was the MACV province advisor under the Vietnamese was Nguyen Van Bach, B-A-C-H.
No, you don't. It's my wife you're talking about.
Good memory. And you learned the Coho language? Man, I tell you what.
Well, I tried learning Vietnamese, but I'm not really good at tones, even though I have training in linguistics. And Kaha is easier to speak. So I was able to learn that because that was the language we worked in, besides Vietnamese, because most of the troops were Kaha speaking troops that were with the regional forces. So having an undergraduate in anthropology, this was sort of a golden opportunity. So I learned the language so I could do some anthropological work, during my field work. And in 2014, I was able to finally do my dissertation in the language. So I wrote a dissertation on the grammar of the language. So that's cool. And it's one of these not really weird esoteric grammar field, frameworks or something. So, it's accessible to other linguists and people. So,
I'd love to read more about that. Steve has a friend down there in Texas that wrote that wonderful book. He was the anthropologist of all times during the Vietnam War. He was
not Hickey.
Yeah, Hickey.
Yeah, Gerald Hickey. Yeah, he passed on some years ago, and I met him at one of the conferences at Texas Tech. Yeah, very interesting gentleman.
Very interesting. He wrote some good anthropological books about.
He wrote about 4 books. I have them. Then he wrote a novel also.
Yeah.
And we had a scholarship for a Montagnard student who ended up at Texas Tech as a sociology professor there. What's his job?
I'm not sure. And he's also at another college there. It's Lap Siu.
Yeah,
he's a derived speaker. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's his specialty?
I'm not sure right now.
Linguistics.
I did see him at the last conference, but
you did see him last month.
What?
You saw him last month.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he has I think an assistant position in Texas Tech in the linguistics or humanities department. And then also he's at another college that teaches, I think he just teaches there, to get that. Plus he has the, the Hickey grant. So, and he's done a dictionary of the dry language, which is online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
have
you-
some excerpts from Hickey's book as relates to the cohort, as relates to the area around Tan Rai. And I photocopied them or something or from his book. But they're here someplace.
he never actually worked directly with the Kaha, and you know, was I
Well,
don't
I have
think
the
he was
whole
very much in Lumdung province at all.
Hickey's whole collection, except for one.
His famous book though is Village in Vietnam, which is
Yeah, that's it.
down in the Delta, and that's where he takes apart. Is it Kain Hao? Anyway, it does an anthropological work on that, and then later on he worked with the tribes people, the Montagnards, and did a lot of work with them. He was the guy that knew all that and was out there. And unfortunately, when he came back to the States, nobody would hire him because they said, "Oh, you're associated with Brand," you know, and that just sort of labeled him, you know, and that at that point in time, the fallout from political correctness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never up at Tan Rai. I never was visited any of the special forces camps there. And sometimes they'd come down to the mess hall at Baulock, and you know, we talked to them a little bit. The guys that were fun were kind of the CIA guys that come in. They're dressed in civilian clothes, and you know, it was we knew each other, so we knew these guys. We go, "Hi, where are you from?" You know, or what do you do? You know, and they go, "No," that kind of thing. We just had fun with them, but I don't know that much what they did in the province. I was just a special force, spec 4, which corporal, and you know, in a team that went out in the field. I didn't know the big picture, you know, so I didn't know all this.
Funny what you say about how they react, because they react the same way, but they all had a cover story.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Of a sort, and like I say, that one captain in Batlock, he was CIA, and he was my main source for intelligence.
Uh-huh.
The guy that gave us the story that the main North Vietnamese guys were going to meet out, you know, in our area west of Tan Rai Special Forces Camp. And so I believed him. I mean, because all the intelligence he gave me up to then was perfect. I believed a bit of it, and it was true. And we tried to give him intelligence from what, you know, if we'd go out on an operation or something like that, we'd tell him what we saw. You know, we ran into a minor hospital or something like that. And by the way, when I went into Cambodia, the next tour over there in 1969 and 70, I took a battalion into Cambodia. And the first thing, I was a major and I was the operations officer of an infantry battalion.
Which one?
We went in and we flew in helicopter. The first cab flew us in with helicopters, and we landed on the hill, and it was one of those rainy, muddy days and crap all over the place. Yeah. And we went into a place called Shakey's Hill, Cambodia. And the first group of people who came up were in kind of camis, not recognized, no rank or anything like that. Those were the CIA guys who had been in that area, probably special forces guys, but they gave us a briefing. They said the hospital's over here, so-and-so's here, and so-and-so's here. And so I gathered my company commanders together and sent them out on the trails in those areas. But they played a big role in intelligence, not only CIA, but the special forces guys. At that time, they were SOG members, I think.
Special operations group, yeah.
Guys. Well, it sounds like you're an educated gentleman.
Well, I try to pull that off.
You know? So did you use the GI Bill to get some of the academic work?
Yeah, I used it to finish up my bachelor's and for a little bit of my master's. So the PhD I paid out of my own pocket. So that was really later on. You know, my nickname in the linguistics department was Old Man. So, you know, we'd read the textbooks and I go, well, I had them as, you know, professors, and now they're in the textbooks, you know, and most everybody's passed on. Yeah.
That's a weird thing. Bill, did you get to use the GI Bill to
I did.
further your education?
I did, yeah.
Now, I was asking Bill too.
Oh.
Bill has a high degree, so did you use the GI Bill or?
Who?
You.
Oh,
Talking about GI Bill to Bill.
yeah,
Bill
yeah, yeah.
Forrest.
No, no. Well, yeah, I did too with the Georgetown. As a matter of fact, I forgot about that. But I was going to ask, have you guys seen this book? Or I suspect you have.
Right.
I don't think so.
That's Ian Sutherland.
Who wrote it?
Yeah.
Ian Sutherland.
No,
I
I'm not familiar with it.
have that. I
Yeah.
published that on CD-ROM with a little, about half of it's been updated by Ian before he died.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
I
That
have
was
a CD-ROM version or an electronic version of that book.
Oh, really?
there are some pictures of myself and a few from the camp area and that. And it happened chance because there was a guy who just sold military memorabilia, and he asked me one day, I was in there browsing around, he said, do you have any Vietnam pictures? And the guy's name was Peterson in Springfield, Virginia here. And I said, yes. He said, well, I know a guy who's writing a book and he'd like some pictures. So I just took a couple of slide trays and gave them to him and with no explanation and bundled them up and this guy sent them to him. And lo and behold, God, I think it was close to a year later, was in there, and the Peterson, the guy that runs the shop, gave me this book. He says, this is a souvenir from Sutherland. And I paid to it. And I found one was a shot of me holding up a sawed-off version of the AR-15, which became known in Iraq, Afghanistan, the M4, M16, I think, variant. But we had them experimentally. We had a couple in our detachment. But anyway, it's a good little book. He went into a lot of detail from the way back, and I was impressed with it. But best thing about it was free. I got all my slides back and a couple blow-ups of some of the pictures that
Well, that's cool.
that he liked. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I have a
It's
question.
best to
of
document
Steve.
all this stuff because, we're getting long in the tooth. And, Vietnam is kind of fading in the historical background kind of. So it's nice to write all this stuff up and have it because there's so much, there's something like 3,000 books or something. Steve, you'd know more about that.
It's a lot
You
more.
have all of them behind you there, but anyway.
I have probably about 1,000 of my own. And
Yeah.
that makes special forces.
Yeah, and I've got some in Vietnamese and some French books too, but you only have so much room in a condominium. But I've written up some stuff, and I've given papers both at Texas Tech and different places, and written some papers. So I try to at least do from my perspective on regional forces and that thing of being a smaller cog in the greater machine, and documenting that. 'Cause everything was, as you well know, the guy next to you has a different tale to tell.
Mhm.
And it's a different thing. But if you tell it from your point of view and you explain, here's where I am, here's what was going on at the time. And that's the background, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
In relation to that, Steve, I'd like to ask you what are the top books to read? I mean, I have a big shelf like that too. It's not represented in this room here, by the way. It's in the other room, but I have hundreds of from Vietnam. But two of them really impressed me, and that guy from North Vietnam that really was with Lee Doc To all the time, who broke up, who was the first chairman of the Communist Party. I want to say Buon or something like that. He wrote a book about his angle, and then a professor down in Tennessee, I think, or Kentucky, wrote a pretty good book. I got to go find those things and discuss them with
The book for the guy that I think it wasn't Kentucky, I think it was Georgia, wrote on the South Vietnamese Army.
possibly.
Is that the one you're talking
What would
about?
you recommend?
Oh, gosh.
You already have my Yellow Book series on an overall book on the Vietnam War. I'm working on a volume from Bill Laurie.
Uh-huh.
He took a 30-page high school textbook, and if any of you happen to have that, it's called The Americans.
Is it Vietnamese or
And if you got the
English?
teachers in English,
Oh, okay.
if you got the teachers edition, I like to get it because I don't know. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's 30 some pages in this big fat book about Vietnam, and Lori has been working for probably 30 years writing a response
Yeah.
to it, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to it because I didn't know. Yeah, I've always when I work with him is somewhat difficult because he gets carried away. But finally, I went to get it from him. I got his manuscript as a whole, and I offered to publish it for him on Amazon.
yeah.
And I really got into it. He took those 30 pages and wrote 700 pages of commentary.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Why the statement was wrong, why this statement was wrong.
Oh,
Just incredibly, thoroughly going through it and tearing it apart. Then he wrote another 1,000 pages of general criticism of what was being taught, with
oh my gosh.
10 pages devoted to Carnal and 10 pages devoted to Bright Shining Lie, going right through it, everything. But he is so dedicated to the facts involved. So the information inside the book is absolutely incredible because, for example, I'm editing the pages now. He's talking about rice.
Yeah.
He's got the statistics on in the book on rice consumption, rice production, rice exports. All there in the book. That's why I knew he had that. I didn't know how much he had. That's why I got him to join my panel in the Texas Tech conference.
We'd go down to the market in Bauloch, and you'd see the big bags of rice, the USAID rice for sale. And it was from the US, it was from Louisiana, because they weren't growing rice because it was insecure or whatever. And, it's just amazing. And I'm going, that should be free. And they go, no, it's, and they knew who we were. There weren't that many of us in province, so we'd go into villages and they knew our names and who we were and all that. So, we took the high road on that, had to. Because we did take some casualties for a variety of reasons. Mostly it was just friendly fire and what now is called IEDs. But you saw a lot of the products from USAID and the rice because they just weren't growing any at that point in time. In '68, let's just say. Now, of course, Vietnam's a major rice exporter.
Yeah, they are.
Back up to where they were prior to the war. So, how many of you have been back to Vietnam since the war?
All of us.
Go, yeah. What did you think?
All of us.
Well, I've seen the economy grow
Oh, yeah.
1998. That's when I first went. 98, I went back
Oh, wow.
all the way up to probably 2010 or 11. So I made multiple trips back,
I have too.
so I could see the growth.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Growth. And but the graft is still there, you know, the payoff. Communist Party's slowly dying off. The young kids of their generation from the old cronies that started the whole after 1975, you know,
Uh-huh.
the killing fields and all that stuff. I met some of those guys who took great delight in being soldiers. One time we went over there, my son and I, and we were looking for shoes, a shoe manufacturer. Because he was president of one of these shoe companies here in the United States. And he was looking for another manufacturer over there, just asking questions. And the guy that they put us in touch with, he was about my son's age. My son now is 57 or something like that. And I'm 84 years old. So he put us in touch with this guy, and the guy started talking, and I realized what he had done. He was a captain in the Viet Cong, whatever it's called, after the war, after 1975.
It was it was,
And
they took it apart.
yeah, and he went into Cambodia and wiped out all those people and so on. And he took great pride in doing that. We had to sit there and listen to that crap. But I mean, me, from, you know, my understanding of who they really were, my son was just listening to the portion where that guy was a shoe manufacturer over in Vietnam, and he wanted to use his new manufacturing company, perhaps. My son never used it, but it was interesting to talk with the guy and know his background. And when I went back to Vietnam, or went back to Tan Rai, I could hardly find it. First time back at Tan Rai, I could hardly find it. And I finally found one of the huge bunkers. Not one that I built, but later, I guess. And I've been back to Tan Rai probably 3 times.
Really? Wow.
One time on a motorcycle, because nobody would take me up there. So I hired this motorcycle guy out of Balak. We went from Balak up to Tan Rai, not that far. And they have new roads up there now.
Probably.
But the actual location of the camp, I finally found the tea plantation, and I talked to the guy, and I said, well, who are you? What's your background and all that stuff? He said, well, during the war, he said he was up in Hanoi, and he was a police chief. I said, yeah, but what are you doing down here? He said, well, they gave me this. They gave me this tea plantation.
Oh, wow.
Take it over. And then I go all over Lam Dong province, and I find out that's the story. You know, the rewards go to the victors, and those assholes and the guys who fought against us, they're the guys who now own the property. And the guys that fought with us, they're the guys that drive those little, you pedal around on a bicycle and you pull people behind you, you know, on the streets of Saigon.
That's a pedicab, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
So, you know, I came to that realization when I first went over there in 1998, I think sometime shortly after that, you know, because I was curious. I found a few of the mountain yards, Kaho, you say it differently than I do, Koho tribe, and they didn't remember too much, but they had lived around that area for a while. So I got to talk with them. And instead of driving, at that time, I guess they were walking, but now they were driving these 3-wheelers, little 3-wheeler, pulling a trailer, and then they'd all pile on and they go, and then they would do whatever they do, gardening or something like that. Here's a weird thing. When I went back one time, I went down to, I was south of Saigon in Tan An province, and they took me to Rock Kien. because that was where I was the second time around. I was in a leg infantry outfit. We were in Rockien 9th Infantry Division Battalion. And I looked and I saw, what I saw is people taking mud, big chunks of mud out of one area, taking it over and putting it in another area, another hole. And I said, well, that's impressive, you know, hard work and all that stuff. And don't pay attention to that. That's my phone ringing over here. Don't worry about it. So afterwards, I got to think, well, what the hell was that? It was the re-education camp. Those people that were doing all that hard labor down there, hot, sweating, and moving mud from one place to another. And I found out later, what they do is they move it back from the other place. It's just labor. It's just bullshit. It's re-education.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot of the Montagnards are the tribes people that escaped in 1982 and 86 and moved to North Carolina. I've worked with them on the language and stuff like that. There's a lot in Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, and in Greensboro. There's more in Greensboro, which is where I usually work out of. I haven't been back since the pandemic, but there's about 3,000 of the tribes people, Rade, Jorai, also Kaha, that are there. And, you know, they have their own churches. They're Americans. Some of the kids are learning the language, some aren't. And it's really interesting, just as an, you know, an anthropology person in linguistics. You know,
how do they communicate back and forth to each other? Do they still use the Montagnard language, Koho, or do
some of
they?
them keep it up, yeah. But most of them, a lot of them talk to each other in Vietnamese because that's the other language, and most of them talk. The younger kids talk English.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
A lot
North
of them.
Carolina. Go ahead.
At Tan Rai, a lot of them, not a lot of them, but some of them did speak Vietnamese because they had to deal with the Vietnamese.
Yeah, that's a national language. The Kaha in Vietnam have a collective. It's called Kaha Collective out of Dalat, I believe. And there's about 200,000 Kaha that are still in Vietnam, in Lam Dong and what used to be Tuyen Duc. But, you know, the language is kept up. It's one of the languages. There's stuff published in it, and they have radio transmissions. So it's not an endangered language. It's one of my other issues that I work with. So interesting.
I wanted to ask my friend, he's over in Vietnam now. He's in Nha Trang. Yesterday or the day before, we did a FaceTime on WhatsApp, and he before that he was in Dalat, and before that he was in Ban Me Tuot.
Oh my!
And then he'll go to Cam Ranh Bay eventually, I'm sure. But he's going to stay until the end of April.
Wow!
Because he gets his teeth fixed up. His whole bottom teeth are out, and he's going to get the implants over there and get them taken care of somehow or another. I think he already has the implants, maybe, but he needs to get.
Oh wow!
Now this guy.
Hey, there we go.
Bill,
this is a picture that Bill Florence donated to Ian
Yeah.
Shepard's book.
You notice.
Over
I
here.
want to point out something on that. You notice the carbine bayonet on the left there?
Well, he's holding a puppy, isn't he?
Pardon?
He's holding a puppy?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But the
Unless
the
it's a
bayonet,
disguised gun.
one of the first things that I did when I got into camp, and I don't know what inspired it, but I put in a requisition for, I think, 600 bayonets for the old World War II stock carbine bayonet. Because, you know, the basic weapon was a carbine. We had a lot of M3 grease guns too, but the carbine was the basic weapon. And we started bayonet drill. And I remember the story that about Wheeler. This wasn't from Wheeler firsthand, but the guy who was telling me this in Saigon said this was kind of a dire situation, and they actually had fixed bayonets, the Montagnards. It was to that point, and then whatever, it broke off satisfactorily. But I don't think there was ever a bayonet charge, but Wheeler did a charge of his own, as I remember the story. I'm looking forward to reading that write-up. But anyway, the bayonets there, that was they just loved them because, you know, everybody likes a knife, and they would go out and they did the French bayonet drill. a lot of these guys were, of course, veterans of the first Indochina War, and, but they really impressed some other folks with regard to their bayonet drill, and I always thought that that maybe stood in good stead in that particular battle, because the only casualty I think that we had was one guy got cut on his bayonet, or cut somebody else with it. The little babies were sharp, but I'm waiting to read that write-up to get a little more detail.
And we didn't have bayonets on the M16s in the 4th Infantry Division.
That's right. Yeah, they came in later. I mean,
Yeah,
they,
I was 67, 68. We didn't have those. We just had the M16. Then the regional forces teams in 67 and 68 had old Korean War stuff. You know, they had M2s.
Yeah.
And we had to go to school down at On K to learn how to. I didn't know much of that equipment, but we were trained in all the old style equipment, because that's what we're training with. So, you know, you learn about all that. And they later on in the next year or so, they did get M16s, but that's what they had. And of course, the NLFVC in that province had, you know, AK-47s, which, you know, is quite a good weapon. So interesting.
We had that right behind this guy. That's the ammo bunker, and also our communications station down there for CW. And we had stuff in there, World War II offensive grenades.
Yeah.
All kinds of 9mm stuff, but that was more CIA related. But World War II white phosphorus grenades. But I never had heard of an offensive grenade, but they were there. 1942 dated, and some of that stuff. It was,
oh my gosh,
kind of crazy.
When was this picture taken?
When?
Yeah.
I would say about very early 65, January, maybe February.
Okay.
Possibly. It could have been a little bit later, but yeah, those are good guys. I later got the tiger stripe uniform. I thought this was lousy camouflage, so I got a whole issue of the tiger stripe, which is much better in the jungle.
Yeah.
And so they wore these around garrison, but when we went out for an operation, my God, they wore the tiger stripe, and so it was you were dressing up to go out, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have any camouflage stuff. The regional forces didn't. They just had, you know, the sort of Arvin cast-offs, and then they had the Bata tennis shoes, you know.
Yeah.
And,
Bata boots, I think they called them.
The what?
They called them Bata boots.
Bata.
Bata, B-A-T-A. It's a Czech company, and the name's cleaned up and all that. But and that was a major supplier of shoes. There was I found out later, a factory in Vietnam that manufactured those and other types of shoes. Yeah, it's a major manufacturer at that point. I don't know what it does now, but anyway, a footnote. I just saw something in some statistics that the population of Vietnam is now over 100,000.
100 million.
100 million, excuse me.
Yeah,
100 million, which is incredible. And it's the size of California.
I have no idea. What was it then in the 60s?
It was way half that.
Yeah.
South Vietnam was like 20 million.
Yeah.
North Vietnam is a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and then
well more than doubled.
Yeah, and so they've been at peace, you know, and country's totally modern. I was back there, I think, probably in the mid 2015, let's say. That was about the 4th time, and it's totally modern, you know. And highways, the airports are super modern. Everyone speaks English. Saigon, which, you know, they call Ho Chi Minh City, absolutely modern. And then we went to Hanoi for the first time that we went back in 1991. And I hadn't been there. And Hanoi was still sort of this little French kind of little village at that point. Now it's, you know, it's a metropolis.
Did they add those things on the airport where you actually go to the airport instead of getting on a bus?
I'm trying to, no, they actually had the ramps that come down. You know, before you just got off the plane on a step and went down and went into this place, and this little, you know, in Hanoi, it was horrible. Yeah, very primitive. But now it's totally modern.
Okay.
You know, it's a really very interesting country, you know, as you well all know. But it's good to go back and see it at peace.
But the level of prosperity there, the GNP by individual, is not up to Thailand or Singapore
No,
in any way. They're
no,
way out.
no, it's not.
And the reason is because of the kleptocracy they've got. They've got probably one of the most corrupt governments in the world.
Yeah. But nobody talks much about the party. The party has pared down a lot of the members, and
They're,
you know, the younger kids have come in, so it's mellowed a little bit. But it's, you know, it's still a Stalinist regime. You know, I don't think there's any way you can call it otherwise.
but the last two leaders over there, the one who's currently in power, the one who he got rid of to take over, one of the two had like a huge gold statue bust of Ho Chi Minh that just out of what he's stolen. That was he had it, all the stolen goods were in Ho Chi Minh. Well, that wasn't all; it was only a part.
Oh no, they weren't stolen; they were liberated.
Liberated, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, you got corruption everywhere, but it's just rampant. But they're going more and more. They got rid of all of the state-owned and enterprises because they were losing money, and each province, it seems, is just sort of does its own. And Lamdong, you know, just sort of an out-of-the-way little province, as we all remember. And now, you know, it's a major province with like over 100,000 people in it. You know, maybe more than that. I don't have the numbers right here, but you know, and you go back there, and Baolak's like a big city. You know, the lots that the province capital, because they did away with Nguyen Duc, the one to the east, and combined it together to be like the old pre-1955 Donai or Dong Nai province. So it's just interesting. But most of the Montagnard villages that I lived in and visited are no longer there. And I assume they've moved higher in the mountains or they've been integrated. I just didn't see that much integration in that. You know, it's kind of sad, but they're there, but I don't know where. He's back.
This is so interesting to be able to talk to an anthropologist, a guy who is married to a Vietnamese who's written 1,000 books, a past commander previous to me, and all that experience, and all educated. I mean, this is I hope Steve is capturing all of this.
Recording this, Steve?
I am recording this.
Okay, cool. That's great. That's good because, you know, there's people interested in, and it's like when we go back to Texas Tech, you know, they'll invite Vietnamese from Vietnam, they'll talk, and then they have some of the students. And I saw like, you know, a blonde hair, blue-eyed girl talking Vietnamese to this Vietnamese guy, you know, and from what I know of, you know, Vietnamese, it was a very good accent. You know, it's a hard language for me.
Was that Lei Min Dao's daughter?
Huh?
Was that Lei Min Dao's daughter that you saw?
No,
Talking?
I really couldn't tell you, you know, the memory, you know.
You know, we all have different approaches to this thing. I have to look at my buddy, Sam Lee, and talk about him just for a second. His, you know, plight in life and journey. Basically, he was our interpreter at Tan Rai. And so he finally got out in 1979. You know what happened in 79?
Yeah.
He had to escape from the re-education camps. And he brought his family over. He brought half his family over, left half his family over there. And today he's in Vietnam, and he's sending me videos of him and his family and resorts at Nha Trang. He's really sold on that Nha Trang resort that he's in right now.
Well, it's a beautiful city.
Oh, it is. And he has lived the American dream. So he escaped Vietnam. He put all that behind him. He lived the American dream. He wrote a book about it. He's key on forgiveness and vulnerability and religious. He's a very religious guy. You know, he's.
What was his name again?
Sam Lien Lee, Lien Lee. You can look at his book. It's called, let's see, Stills the Storm. Let's see. I'll think of it in a minute. I've got it right over here, his book.
Mhm.
But something stills the storm.
I don't think I have that.
Sam Lee and Lee on anyhow, in that book, he became he forgave and talks about great gracefulness and being alive and the American dream. And he's totally converted in his mind to be a very successful businessman up in Spokane, Washington. He's got one of the biggest, nicest furniture stores, 2 of them.
Wow.
And he brought 2 of his kids over here, 2 boys over here. And the 3rd one was born here in the United States. And each one of them married a different nationality white. One married a Japanese, one married American, one married an American. So he's going to write a book now about his grandchildren.
Sure.
His grandchildren are going to Gonzaga in Spokane.
Mhm.
They are on scholarship. They're the soccer players, girls, 2 girls. Now the boy, the grandson, he's over in Phoenix at the soccer school over there that Spain put all around the world, and they put one in Phoenix. And Brady then he's a high school sophomore.
Wow.
And he played on the varsity team when he was a freshman, and now he's a sophomore. He still plays on the varsity team. And we've watched him play down here in San Diego. My wife and I went down and met him. Anyhow, he lived the American dream. So that's my vision. There it is right
Okay.
there. The spirit stills the storm.
Didn't they?
And it's a great book. He's gotten many buyers, and he gives them away now at his furniture store and all that stuff. I've got some
Okay.
copies here.
Oh,
Thanks.
So, and we all have different angles, and then so I'm in touch with actually up in Orange County. There's a big deposit of Vietnamese, and I'm in touch with a lot of those up there
Mhm.
from a different angle. There, I met them during my education days, professorship and president of university and stuff like that, and I met them in Orange County, and I'm still in touch with them. So Dr. Kiep Trong is one, Dr. Sun Nguyen, and their families. We know all about their families. We visited back and forth.
Wow.
So that's my latest approach and angle into Vietnam. Now you guys, all have your own approach and memories and so on, but I thought I would just share those just to tell you where I'm coming from.
What was your professorship? Where were you?
The last one was online with University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. But mainly I pedaled around with an outfit called Apollos University, which I've co-founded. And now they're up in Great Falls, Montana, and they're going to be moving down to Florida. They're pretty successful, but they're an online school.
Okay.
That's been my approach online, because I started with two-way video back in the early 90s. And of course, at that time, no one entity could afford to have a two-way video. So my forte was to put 3 people together. So I would put the university together with the manufacturer of the two-way video, with the people who would pay. And that was the government, U.S. Military government. So I put together the first two-way video conferencing system in the world. It was a headache. That's a whole nother story. But because of that, I co-founded Apollos University with a Vietnamese guy. So me and a Vietnamese guy co-founded that. We also co-founded the one in Saigon, which was taken away from us by the Communist Party. Took away all of his money. He invested a lot of money into it. I invested a lot of time in it. And we built something out, started out in Cu Chi, because that was a province that had no universities at all. They graduate from high school, they could not go to a university. Now, 1996, 97, sometime in there. And so we were going to put the very first university in there. So we started building, and he put all of his money into it and all that stuff. And what we found out was the Ministry of Education, they wanted their cut on the deal, and they wouldn't approve anything out there in Cu Chi. So we had to go into Saigon and go to an existing venue. And then that's where we put the university. And I think it's the 16th district, whatever that's called. I think it's Yadin University now. And that's the way, it's a technical, they have we put a lot of computers in there and high-tech stuff.
A lot of schools in Saigon.
Yeah. But Yadin University, it is the one that we founded over there. So that's 2 universities. And the one up in Saigon, in Orange County, what's that one called? Union University. Union International University. It's a religious, and what they do is they take the Bibles and everything over to Vietnam and distribute them free.
Oh, wow.
Okay, who is
Who are those pretty ladies?
Is that the lady that you talking about? Neil?
no.
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 Well, maybe so. No. I remember them at the meeting.
Yeah, this is Lee Mandau's daughter. Lee Mandau was
Lady
a
is,
general
Nguyen, yeah.
at the end of the war.
Yeah.
Really spectacular general. And his daughter just wrote a book about him. So
I heard
There's a
about
series-
her through
yeah.
Toastmasters. Sam Lee and Lee is a big Toastmaster guy, and he got in touch with her, if that's the same one. And she goes around and she gives speeches. It looks like the same one. I don't know if it is or not.
well, I don't, if it's Lee Mandau's daughter, that's probably the one. There are a bunch of Vietnamese who were there at the convention or at the thing,
Conference.
and they were doing the panel, but 2 of them were video bloggers. One of them had 50,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And at one lunch we had there, I told one of them, I said, see this guy over here? And I pointed to Steve Young. And I said, he speaks better Vietnamese than you do.
Yes.
Wow.
And all 4 of them just piled on him, and they tested him. And I was right.
His Vietnamese is excellent. Yeah.
My wife said,
talk to him. Yeah.
we met him in 1972
I was jealous.
in Boston, and he was giving a speech to a Vietnamese group in Boston. And my wife said, if you didn't see his face and you only listened to what he said, he would be elected president of South Vietnam.
Wow.
Hey, folks, I'm going to have to go, but I wanted to say how great this has been, meeting you folks, and Steve, reacquainting again since 1999. But
well, you have another communications from me sometime today. I believe your Green
2
Beret
books. This is about Lum Dong a little bit. There's Michelle. I don't know if any of you guys have this one.
No,
It's
No.
by
looks good.
Michael Green and James Brown, War Stories of the Infantry. And it has about Paul Micheli, who was a corporal and he's a captain and one of my mentors in Lum Dong. And he was over there for a long, long time. And so they write a chapter on him. Then there's a second book. I'll just be real quick on this by Sewer Menzel. And it's got like 50 pages on Micheli. Micheli's
Wow.
passed on. I saw him out in San Francisco a couple
Yeah.
of years ago. But there's and they go into great detail about what was going on in the province during
Yeah.
that time. So it's really good to know. Those are
Neil?
just some of the books. Then one last thing, and I'll let you guys go, is I found this, and this is an American Vietnamese guy, and it's giant. It's a huge dictionary.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's a really good dictionary. and by Andre Nguyen Van Chau. Anyway, wonderful Vietnamese English dictionary. So if you get a chance, I forget how much it costs because it's, I didn't have it listed, but I bought that. So I got 2 copies. So I'm gonna send one to one of my friends. Let's see, what else was I gonna say?
Neil?
Yeah.
Have you got a book that was sort of self-published, I think, by Frank Brown and Bill Laurie on Vietnam fiction?
I've heard of it, yeah.
I'm trying to find a copy of it because Bill, all his stuff is in storage and he can't find it. And Frank has passed away. If I can find a copy of it, and I couldn't find one on Amazon.
Couldn't? What's the name of the book?
I don't know the name of the book. So
Oh, now who are the 2 authors again?
Frank Brown and Bill Laurie.
Well, Bill's around. Frank Brown. Wait, that's one of the guys on here, isn't it? No.
Laurie was out at the conference. Brown's deceased. But if I could find that for him.
Was it James? No, Frank Brown. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Bill Laurie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill was there. I didn't talk. I may have talked to him a little bit, but anyway.
But
Yeah, and it's
if
their
I could
book?
find a copy of that book, I would retypeset it and publish it for him.
Well, let me see what I can do because I'm sort of a research nerd, as you well know. So maybe I can find it. Who
I'm
knows?
surprised you don't have it. I thought I might have it here somewhere, but I
You don't
know.
have it among all those books there?
No.
Luckily, you don't have earthquakes.
I
All
used
right, now that you're talking about books, I've got to talk about this one right here.
Oh, wow, Tiger Man.
Now, the thing is, this is an anonymous name.
Oh,
This is Harold Kuhn. He was at my Special Force, Tan Rai Special Forces camp, Harold Kuhn, and he wrote a memoir. And it wound up, it was about 700 pages, and it was for sale on eBay. And a guy in London bought it because he's a historian nerd. He bought it and he read it and he saw my name in there. So he called Steve Sherman and somehow another contacted Steve Sherman. This guy's name was Dan Green. And Steve Sherman said, call me. And he said, Ray, do you want to be in contact with this guy? If so, I can put you in contact. Steve Sherman puts me in contact with Dan Green in London. And because Dan Green bought this thing off of eBay. And then he started reading parts of it, and he'd copy a page of it and send it to me, that which pertained to me in Tan Rai. And the first half of that memoir was about Tan Rai. So I published the first part anonymously because Harold Kuhn is dead now. He passed away a couple years ago. And I guess his family decided to put that memoir out there on eBay. And so anyhow, I published this part of it. And the guy in London wanted us to publish the second part of that book. I said, no, I don't want to have anything to do with it because I was not there. I can't validate it. I can't say for sure that happened. But I can say for sure this happened at Tan Rai because I was there and Sergeant Kuhn came in. I know Jim Neighbors mentioned that he was a weapons guy. He was actually an intel guy. He built my intel scheme, did a really good job.
Interesting.
And we finally, the guy in London was the guy driving this whole thing, wanted to publish the second part of the book. And I refused. I said, I'll do the first part. I'll do it anonymously, but I will not publish the second because I don't know what happened.
no.
And it was a gory deal. He went back to another camp after being shot up a couple times and in hospital in Japan. And he went back into the camp, another camp, and it got overrun by the Viet Cong. So he describes all of that. Well, I don't know anything about that because I was not there. So then we got a hold of his family. The guy in London got a hold of Harold Kuhn's family. And his family said, well, we would just as soon not publish that. And we couldn't understand it. Why wouldn't you want to publish this hero and what his journey and all that stuff? Because the family said he was a child molester.
Oh,
And they've gotten some bad publicity on the guy.
oh,
So that's why this is anonymous. You know, it's not
Okay.
Harold Kuhn.
okay, yeah.
And if you read
That's too
into
bad.
it,
That's-
it's on Amazon, but I think I put my name in here as Captain Sage. That was it, Sage. So I'm not Captain Stryler anymore. I'm Captain Sage. And then
Wow.
all the other books names I took out, like Jim Neighbors, who was on this video conference. I took him out. And all
What
that.
was Coons's job? Oh,
Well, he came to me as an intel guy, and
Yeah.
he was a wonderful intel guy. But I know Jim Neighbors, who's team sergeant, he mentioned that he was a weapons guy. Maybe that was his background.
I was an intel sergeant here, but I was thinking about a KUNZ or something. There's another
Well,
guy.
That's how you spell it. Okay.
Got it.
He was
Ray, did you say that Colonel Patch was the C detachment commander at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I thought you did. I was the ASO and gave him his in-country briefing at Nha Trang. And by that time, I don't know whether, I think things were starting to confuse me a little bit on what we were doing in country. And I remember in briefing him, I would say, or I said, I can't figure out the plan for the country, what we're doing. In my view, we seem to have three separate wars. We have an ARVN war, a Special Forces war, and the Vietnamese, well, the U.S. war by that time.
Yeah.
We were in there.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no, seems to be no coordinated plan. And I had really kind of digested the Malaya experience of the British. And I think I said, you know, what provinces do we intend to color blue by the end of what year? And there was no discernible plan for that.
No.
So where are we going, you know? And so it's totally uncoordinated. But anyway, I'm greatly condensing and simplifying that. But at any rate, I ran into a guy back at Fort Benning about a year later or so, and who had been in the C detachment. And he said, I said, what was your job? And he said, I was the S3. And under Patch, yeah. You know what that son of a bitch had me do? I had to go all over 2 corps to every goddamn province and find out what their plan was. What the ARVN plan was.
Oh,
Yeah.
plan.
What's going on with U.S. forces? What's going on with special forces? Because I cited the example that, you know, Colonel Patch, I can give you 10 reasons of why to put a special forces camp into 2 corps, and I can give you the same reasons to close a camp down, which was I was very much involved in.
Yeah.
By just changing the inflection of my voice. There's 10,000 locals in this area. There's only 10,000 locals in this area. And because I couldn't see the rhyme or reason of why camps were going in at the time.
Mm.
It really, it made a kind of a negative impression on me based on, again, looking very carefully and closely as the best thing about the Special Forces camp is that we had to read hardcover books, and they weren't field manuals, they were actual history. And I thought that one of the best courses I've ever took in the military career. It was that course for that reason, and came out with a little bit of an appreciation. And I think that basic appreciation was just basically missing Army-wide. So it kind of explains.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, we didn't understand the type of war. We didn't know what we were doing.
You are very perceptive. I bet Colonel Patch didn't like you very much because you embarrassed him in front of everybody else. But
No. This was a private. No, he just had arrived, And so
Oh.
this is a very private, kind of a one-on-one. I don't think there was anybody else in the room. I was the ASO and Trang, and they said, Forrest, go in there and brief Colonel Patch, you know. And I don't know if that ever got anywhere else. I probably would have been in trouble with my superiors had they sat there and listened to it. But that was my candid take at the time, and very close to the end of the tour there.
That's very interesting. I have to break it down this way. For me, when my first tour was with Special Forces, 1966 and 7.
Early on.
At that time, Johnson was the president. Westmoreland, World War II thinking. You know, it was hearts and mind. World War II, go kill them and count body counts. So that was my experience from 66, 67. I came back 69 and 70, and it was altogether different. Nixon was Vietnamization or with honor or something like come home with honor, Vietnamization or something like that.
Yeah.
So in other words, you were there, you were talking about the time when there was no direction. If at all, it would be the World War II direction from Westmoreland. And so I got to see two different time periods over there and how the Americans were reacting to that and how the Vietnamese were reacting to that. It was totally different the two times I was over there. It was a changing, dynamic, mobile situation. And but you're right, the guidance never came down to do it this way.
Now, this is an evolutionary process. When Westmoreland came in country, everybody's military attention was they were there to block the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Go into Operation El Paso. And Johnson says, no, I'm not going to start World War III. And he wouldn't let him go. Now, Westmoreland was a nice guy. As I told Dallas one time, who was complaining about it, Westmoreland was not just a pretty face. He had a brain. The brain was a guy named Depew. And Depew figured out that we weren't going to go anywhere because Johnson wasn't going to let anything happen. So he had to come up with new tactics and strategy to conduct a war inside of Vietnam, where your enemy had 10 times the access to the land area that he would have had if you kicked him out of Laos. So ultimately, when he couldn't do anything at that point, he asked to be transferred to the 1st Infantry Division. And he took over the 1st Infantry Division. And he came up with all of these tactics that became common later times, you know, the overpass thing, cloverleaf stuff, and all that. Now, one of our guys, Henry Gold, wrote a very good book about Depew. And that's pretty much where I got that kind of information from. Nixon, on the other hand, came in, and because he beat the Democrat, which is Humphrey, he had opposition from day one. And as that movie last night went, they said, we were horrified that Nixon was elected. Okay, does that mean you're going to undercut him? Which basically what they did. Right? It's like Trump, you know. Okay, I'm against Trump, so okay, anything's fair. But Nixon, while he did not necessarily have a plan, the plan he came up was not to nuke North Vietnam, which is what last night's program was all about. So the things that he did were relatively reasonable. Basically, he had been asked by Cambodia to bomb the shit out of the North Vietnamese as long as he didn't kill any Cambodians. Congress and New York Times, you know, were against that. Things got leaked, and the secret bombing, and Kissinger let that Air Force general hang out without coming to his defense, because that all those bombs were dropped where they were supposed to be dropped, and he was changing the record because That's what he was asked to do, told to do. But Kissinger left him hanging. But then in Cambodia, the next year, what people don't consider, and I'm using that word carefully because I gave a talk at Texas Tech one year proposing this, and I've concluded it ever since that I was right. But Sihanouk had reached the end of his rope with the communists.
Oh, yeah.
And it's my belief that he told Lon Nol, I'm going to go to Paris, to France, and take the cure. And you take over the government. You throw me out. After you can tell the Americans do whatever they want to do, come in, get rid of the communists. Now I'll come back, take over from you, and we'll have a country back.
Yeah.
Lon Nol did what he was told, as he always did. The people I've talked to who were in the embassy, both in 1963 and again in 1970, tell me Lon Nol wouldn't take a dump without Sihanouk's permission.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And I have never found, I've tracked down many stories about how the CIA was involved in overthrowing Sihanouk. In the command history for 1970, MACV command history, the Dep Comus MACV for Corps said, yeah, we had an interesting year here in Corps. We were able to do a lot of things because of surprising events in Cambodia. Okay, nobody looked at that. That's primary source material. It doesn't really seem to be very much, except for the fact if you go back in the index of that command history and check who the Dep Comus MACV was, a guy named Bill Colby. And if anything surprised Bill Colby, it wasn't the CIA doing something. Hold on again.
Interesting. I got to sign off, folks. Thanks much again, very much. Really.
Take care, sir.
Hello.
Take care, guys.
We'll be in touch, Bill.
And he's answering
All
his
right,
phone.
yeah. We'll be. What do I have to do? Anything? Just disappear, huh?
We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye.
All right. I'm closing out. Bye.
Understood. Yeah. There we go. Just the three of us.
Okay.
Yeah. Interestingly, I was definitely pro-war in high school, and I graduated in '64. Let's see. And I grew up in Malta, overseas. My father was a Lockheed civilian representative to the Navy. And then after high school, I went to Portugal for about 6 months. So I'd been overseas. I've been to other countries and stuff. So I was real pro-Vietnam and everything. So when I got drafted, I thought, well, I wear glasses and I have flat feet and all that. I'll be maybe in a supply situation if I ever went to Vietnam. No, infantry. So I was in I got to Vietnam, and the third day, when you're in the replacement place for the military, on the third day, I looked around and just saw the buses and everything in Saigon, and I go, we're not going to win this. It's just something where you have that aha moment, where you just sort of hit the fence, at 100 miles an hour. And I realized at that point, and I'm in the infantry, what can I do? And I was later on assigned to the 4th Infantry Division on the Cambodian border.
And sometimes we never know who we were fighting, whether it was the NVA or the 4th Infantry Division.
Well, that was cruel. But and the 4th had the largest AO, and today it's the largest element now in the military. Anyway, enough of that. But then I was on temporary duty for about 9 months down to Lamdong province in being the RTO for our regional forces stuff. So I did my stuff. I was able to do. There was a little silver cloud. I was able to do some anthropology, and I was able to pick up the language. So that was okay. And we sometimes had like Rade would come down from Dak Lak province, and so I'd be talking in English, it'd be translated into Vietnamese, which would be translated into Ka, which would be translated into Rade. I have no clue what it came out with the raw day. We had some guys in the back, Americans that spoke some Vietnamese, and several of the interpreters were quite good, but one said in Vietnamese to the guys, just pretend like you understand what I'm saying, okay? I don't speak much English, you know, and we got rid of him. I mean, it's, you just didn't know. And you're in a province where there's not a lot of you, so you're known who you are, you know. Oh yeah, the 3 Americans with the regional forces. You know, so you take the high road on that. The province is mostly held by the NLF's, the VC. And, you know, I survived, I guess, you know. I'm still working on it. My wife says, you know, Vietnam is my mistress. But anyway, we're still here talking about it. And that's important in hashing things out. I think that's important that there's conversation going on. You know, and we've been through a couple of different incursions and wars, if you want to call them that. I'm glad we're out of Afghanistan. It fell apart really quickly, and that was scary. I think that shocked everybody, you know, how quickly the Taliban took over. Yeah. But after 20 years, what did we accomplish? I don't know. Anyway, that's the end of my rant.
As an individual going to Vietnam, you're spending a year. I knew very little about the big picture, but I knew it was the little picture that I saw, and the people we were fighting with, for the most part, wanted us there and needed us there.
Yeah.
The other guys were not nice people, and they were not going to turn nice people because if they won the war.
Well, you see the results.
A lot of perspective when I moved back and looked something that was 50 years ago. I got a fairly good idea of what happened. And it's really very simple. You know, you had a North Vietnamese society that if they wanted to maintain their power, their rice bowl as the government, the Communist Party in Vietnam, had to take over the South. They couldn't feed the people of the North. They couldn't run an economy. But as long as they were on a war footing, China and Russia would give them enough supplies that they could feed and stay in power. In 1959, they started an invasion of the South Vietnam. They made the so-called National Liberation Front, which didn't occur until 1960.
Correct.
As a front. The way the communists do, they make fronts.
Yeah.
They propagandize. Okay. They thought they were getting somewhere. Diem got overthrown because of probably a communist-inspired Buddhist concern, and we helped them by saying we would permit that.
Get involved. Yeah.
Right. Then we had to come in and rescue the mess that Kennedy had made. And then the North Vietnamese saw that we were doing well. We were actually getting people to participate, to like the government. We were winning hearts and minds, which is what I was over there to do. So in 1968 rather, they had a major offensive, had 2 purposes in mind. One was to lead off with a local VC, the NLF personnel, put them in front, make them the face. And they did, and they got slaughtered.
Yeah.
And then we managed to have Walter Cronkite and Van Sun An and other people who came back and told everybody it was a total American disaster, which it was not.
No, it wasn't.
I'm here in Houston. We have a Hurricane Harvey, and there's floods all over Houston. I'm getting telephone calls from all over the country saying, "Are you all right? I see pictures. You must be up on the roof of your house now waiting for the boats to rescue you." I said, "This is just like the Tet Offensive." I was in a bunker in Pleiku. There was a couple of tracer rounds going overhead every once in a while. And meanwhile, the Mike Force was downtown just kicking the shit out of the NVA, who got totally lost when he got into Pleiku City.
Yeah.
Anyway, by the end of that offensive and the second Tet Offensive, there were basically no more NVA or NLF people.
Yeah, the VC were pretty well wiped out by that.
So, they were not a factor. And the North Vietnamese had to come in with more and more troops, more and more replacements.
Right.
And then we started going home. We started doing other things, and they got into more and more trouble. Now, we should have done what we didn't know is what Sihanouk wanted us to do in Cambodia. He wanted us to come in there and take care of his problem. And we didn't. If you go read the documentation, Nixon, Kissinger, other people talking, okay, they want us to help. What the fuck are we going to do? They dusted off an old plan that Westmoreland or Abrams had just to go across the border and take some caches. Now, Congress said you can do this for 60 days and 40 clicks or something like that. That's it. They should have just gone right across Cambodia and just cleaned them all out. But they didn't know, they weren't thinking. So we got 3 presidents who made major mistakes. Kennedy not paying attention to Laos and agreeing to a so-called pacification or neutralization that didn't occur. We got Johnson, who wouldn't permit El Paso to take place, and you got Nixon, that didn't understand that he was supposed to clean up Cambodia and make Cambodia great again. So the next year, 1972, the North Vietnamese said, well, the Americans just about gone, but we're not going to wait for them to go. We're going to attack now and show we can beat the Americans. So they have their offensive, Eastern offensive. The Vietnamese had gotten much better over this period of time, and they held on for a little bit until the American air power came in and absolutely devastated the North Vietnamese in 1972. The thing is that these are troops in the open. These are tanks. We had an airplane, the C-130, that could plink a tank with 1 round. And they just need to have a point. Here it is. Bing, bong, it's gone. 500 tanks. That's more than the South Vietnamese had.
You mean the T-24s? The T-24s? The NVA T-24 tanks? Yeah.
54s, T-54s.
Excuse me. Yeah.
The other ones were light tanks.
Yeah.
But what people don't understand in the United States is that was the Tet Offensive again in a different level. And that Tet Offensive destroyed all of the jungle fighters of the North Vietnamese army. 3 years later, after building up their forces and trying to do this all over again, you had a bunch of kids sitting out riding on the tanks going into Saigon. It was totally demoralized. And it was a pushover at that point. The key on that was Phuc Long. And the Americans had promised everybody that we were going to come back.
Yeah.
And when the NVA, when Nixon's gone, NVA go in Phuc Long and nothing happens, then Pham Van Dong says they won't come back even if we give them candy. And that was the end.
Yeah.
Right. And that was Congress who said you can't use American money, you can't use American air power, you can't use American troops.
Yep.
The DAO commander in 1975, the DAO, well, the attaché in 75, a general in his last report said, anytime up to 30 days before the fall of Saigon, we could have changed the outcome of the war. It was absolutely right. They were everything was in the open. All we had to do was snap our fingers. But Congress said no. And if Nixon had not had Watergate and not been out of power, as far as I know from talking to people, if you were a crew for B-52 in Guam or Thailand, and even though what the situation was in 74, Congress said, no, you can't do that. But Nixon was president, and he said, you will bomb. there would have been a rush to the flight line. There wouldn't be anybody saying Congress will be mad at me for doing this.
Yeah.
I want my chance. So I fault Congress for doing it. I'm perfectly willing to accept the responsibility of the anti-war people and say, you want credit, you get credit, but take the blame. More people were killed after 1975 in the next 10 years than were killed for the 20 years of war in Indochina.
That's a horrible statistic.
And the guilty party is not the North Vietnamese Workers' Party that was liberating the poor souls in the South. No, they colonized the South.
Oh, yeah.
They took it over. They carpetbagged it. They sent their own people there. They got rid of the entire leftover structure of the National Liberation Front.
Correct.
There's nothing of anything that they ever promised that they held true to, and they punished the people that opposed them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were extremely cruel in the ways they did that throughout the whole course of the war. Right? To have any conception that this was going to be a good thing, let the North Vietnamese come, strains the credibility of anybody. And if people can't see that after 50 years of looking back at history, if you're still being taught that the wonderful North Vietnamese came and made everybody happy, right? You're out of your fucking head. But you're teaching kids that in an impressionable moment in college and in high school, that this is what happened. And it's because of the activism of youth that happened. So you go out there and be active about something, save the world, put your trash in a recycle bin.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you guys read the book H.R. McMaster. H.R. McMaster.
Yeah.
He's my hero. He wrote the book, and he explained a lot of that, what Steve just covered.
But there's another point that's behind all this. Somewhere in the McCarthy era or post-McCarthy era, Congress made laws that limited what the United States government could do to provide information to the people of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And in turning that over to the news media, they had big problems. Now, it's something probably people don't know that much about. But when Obama came into office, okay, yeah.
It's one of several books, but it's quite good.
Yeah. When Obama came in office, they had a military budget thing that was passed, and that twisted the restrictions on the government on what they could do to propagandize inside the United States, and that left agencies like the CIA and the FBI in a position where they can actually use their power, use their intelligence sources to change the opinions of people in the United States without acknowledging it. And this happened in the Obama era, and I've got some papers on that I'm trying to get somebody to write up, because to me it's very interesting. When you actually have the CIA and the FBI paying Twitter or whoever to do things, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
We've reversed ourselves from hands off to actually twisting popular opinion.
Yeah.
Let the government do that. And what about our constitutional prerogatives here? What about free speech, free elections?
He has to go to.
Sorry to say, but I got to go. What a
Yeah.
wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much, Steve. I know you did hard work putting it together.
Yeah.
Can't thank enough. And Neil, really pleasure
It's
meeting you.
email.
I hope we can follow
I
up.
got to set up.
Stay in
touch.
Real quick.
Yeah. Steve and I keep in touch and do things, you know.
Excellent. All right. Got to run.
I'm going to go too, Steve. I've got some errands I need to run.
Go
But
for
this
it.
has been great. This has been really very informative. Okay.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it.
You missed a whole bit before.
I know.
But if you find that book about Frank Brown, I'll forgive you.
I've got it written down. I'll look and see if I can find it. I don't know. Do you know when
Okay.
it was published?
Yeah, probably 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.